Hi, it's Cam Gordon here, the author of the new book, Track Changes, the origin story of Canadian music on the internet, 1990 to 2010. Look forward to talking to award-winning podcaster, Toronto, Mike Boone.
Did you put that in air quotes? Did you?
Well, that's your nickname. No, Toronto.
Oh, okay. I thought you were like, I was from Mississauga.
Yeah.
And I passed as Toronto.
First name Toronto, last name Mike.
That's what the government knows me as. I'm letting this run for a moment because I actually don't know what number this is. I want to get it right. Here we go. Welcome to episode 1864 of Toronto Mic'd, an award-winning podcast proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery. Order online at greatlakesbeer.com for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Visit palmapasta.com for more. Fusion Corp's own Nick Iones. He's got an event with Brad Bradford on April 2nd. Be there, support FOTM Nick Iones. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Joining me today, returning to Toronto Mic'd to talk about track changes, it's FOTM Hall of Famer Cam Gordon.
Mike, it is so good to see you. And I was thinking on the way over here, do I still have the most all-time appearances on Toronto Mike?
I believe you do.
Because
there's no way Stu could have caught you. You still come over every quarter for FOTM cast.
Yeah, like I feel like Rob and Bob and a few other names they're still distant.
Wiseblot was the guy, right? I think you and Stu became 1-2. Yeah. But you're definitely one. Yeah.
Well, I do find it interesting that I'm still at the top of the list, and this, one could argue, is the first time I've ever come over for a purpose. Because I'm actually like I have a reason. I'm on a press junket, as you called out with my friend Stu Stone earlier today with this new book on flying off the shelves.
Well, listen, we're going to talk about this book. I have questions. I read this book.
You're in the book.
I'm in chapter 11.
It's in the book. You're in the book. We're all in the book. Stu's in the
Nick
book.
Kiprios. Well, here's the big question. So
sure,
I'm doing some math in my head. I think about 4 hours ago, I rapped with your friend Stu Stone.
I heard.
This is a weird happenstance where you both came over on the same day, but not together.
Yeah, and I've gotten a few texts just to clear the air. Stu and I are good. We're not mad at each other. I know there's some rumors swirling out. Lainey Gossip has been all over this story, but
is she nice?
I don't think I've ever met her.
Okay, I just assumed you ran in those circles.
No, I feel like I've been at an event where she was there, maybe, but no, I don't think I've
I can't get a good read on her. Like, she may be the loveliest, funniest, most delightful person. I just can't get a read on her, and I've never met her.
Yeah, she's had a good run. I don't know. She's been on that, what's it called? The Social.
The Social
for many years, and I don't know. I mean, I think.
Are you going to be on the Social to promote track changes?
I may have reached out to some producers. I'm not sure they're going to have me on, but I did think, the Social. There's a social media element to this.
I think you'd be perfect for the Social. I also think you'd be an ideal guest for Dina and Tim on breakfast television.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe after that Pagan time slot, 5 days a week.
His 7 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I have some PR cooking, as you mentioned. You've probably seen a few.
You were on with Connie Thiessen.
I was on with Connie Thiessen. I was on with Amber MacArthur. I just did her podcast. That's fresh.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that one.
Yeah.
Who else? Like, where else should I be looking for Cam Gordon appearances?
Well, if you want to see where everything is, the easiest way, go to the Instagram account, track changes _CA. Go to like the link tree. I'm almost trying to because you have to go through where all the places to buy the book. So maybe you'll just buy a few copies along the way. But I actually have all the different press hits listed there. So there's a few.
Okay, and every time you appear somewhere, I'm guessing you post about it on Instagram.
Yeah, every few days I'll update it. I was in the Georgia Strait. There was a really nice article. I might have told you this. It was with a guy who's writing from them now, but he was actually the music editor for the Edmonton Sun in the 1980s and 1990s. So I had a really good chat with him. We actually hung out then for about 90 minutes after. We were just at a coffee shop in Vancouver, and he's telling me about going to all these concerts at the Northlands in the 80s and stuff like that. So that was really cool. So yeah, I'm getting out there, working on a few other things. But anyway, this is always my favorite media opportunity because you're obviously the MSM.
You say that to
here.
all the podcasts.
No. That's why I've been here so many times.
Now, I'm really curious since that's where I was going when I said Stu Stone was here mere hours ago. But have you had a chance to listen to the previous episode with Stu Stone?
I listened to about the first 45 minutes.
Good.
And then I did see that there was some book talk at the end, so I fast forwarded to the end.
Okay.
And I listened to about the last 30 minutes. I did hear about the Stu's podcasting years. That again, I feel ties into some stuff we're going to be talking about today.
And that was a missing link for me, which it never, believe it or not, even though Stu's been over here 100 times, we had never dove into sort of his role in the podcast industry and those missing years in California.
The wilding years.
Yeah, I always knew he was friends with Devin Sawa and Fievel Goes West and these people, but I didn't really connect all these dots till today.
Well, it's why I like you, Toronto Mike. It's why I like Stu. You guys are just, it's in the book. I heard Stu read it. You guys are both curious and you're just always doing new stuff. Okay. You're always Stu's had 10 different careers and just such a creative guy. Just so I feel like both you guys, if you ever stopped moving and stopped creating, you'd literally probably drop dead. Shout out to
Ridley Funeral Home.
Exactly.
So I know you. This has been spoiled for you because you skipped ahead. You couldn't show the restraint required to listen proper. But I'm going to play 2 minutes for you from Stu. Okay. And then we can address this. So let's listen. Any words for your friend Cam Gordon as he launches his very first book?
I'm surprised that this is his first book because Cam has always been a person that has been a very creative guy and rather shy about his creativity growing up. And I'm happy to say that with the help of this very platform that he references in Chapter 11 and, myself and you, I feel like Cam came out of his shell in almost his late 30s, early 40s were transformative years for him that maybe would have happened for others earlier in life, but I think it happened for him. Now, this is a guy that was the head of communications for major companies, and I'm saying this about him. He was a shy guy. And so the fact that when I encountered Cam as an adult and found out that he was the head of communications, you can imagine I was a little bit like, wow, that's Cam doing that? That's crazy. But it's not crazy because he's always had it in him. It just took a guy like Mike Boone and a guy like Stu Stone to help him feel comfortable enough to bring it out. And I'm so happy that he's not only become one of the best podcast co-hosts, he's obviously kept up doing appearances here on this show. He's a Hall of Famer. He's hilarious. But his writing, he's always been a great writer. And the fact he's always written cool blogs and made really cool posts and observations. Very detail-oriented guy. Even back when we were in high school, when we would do fantasy baseball stuff, he was overly prepared for those drafts as far as looking under the hood of what each player brings to the table. So it doesn't surprise me that Cam wrote a book. It surprises me that it took this long for Cam to write a book, and I'm excited for him to have success with this book and future success with future books. So Cam Gordon, the author, congratulations to him, and he should be very proud of the accomplishment, and I wish him continued success in everything that he does, and it's about damn time that he wrote a book. So congrats, Cam, and I love you.
Oh.
How How would you like to respond to Stu Stone?
I'm like speechless. I do, like you said, it took you to take me out, get me out of my,
We're taking all
out
the
of our
credit for
shells,
this.
as it were.
Out of our shells.
Yeah, but no, that's very kind of Stu to say, and yeah, I mean, he's not wrong, and some of this, God, not to go full Kyprios, it does allude to some of this in the book, but I've always done school newspaper, campus radio, blogs, GeoCities.
I just had Liz
websites.
Worth over here. She talked about you at Exclaim.
It was actually The Spill.
Oh, The
Spill
Spill
magazine.
right.
Yeah,
She misremembered, I think.
yeah, but it's all good. But yeah, I mean, it's like you just sort of keep up with the media and just always be creating. And I don't know, like I always also never really had the guts to pursue any of this as like a career too, which is probably why I end up in PR. But I think this book also proves that there's actually a lot of continuity between the two. I say that there's a lot of PR people who know nothing about the media too. I'll say that, and maybe we could do another podcast on that some other time.
I need names.
Yeah. But again, like I've always liked to think like professionally, I've always been like a good friend to media too, by not totally stonewalling them at every opportunity, despite some of I've represented a lot of high profile clients over the years. So to balance both, and I mean you've now had a few PR types on your show. You got Eric Alper and the other Cam Carpenter.
Carpenter, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be at the book launch. You just had Gordon Lightfoot's like publicist.
Yeah, Victoria Lord.
Yeah, so we're not all.
Would
evil.
you count Richard Flohill in there?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, might have been the Richard Flohill, but yeah. Anyway, thank you, Stu. I love you too, buddy, and yeah, thanks for the words.
I have some questions about the book, but may I crack open a fresh can of Great Lakes beer?
Absolutely. I'm going to do that.
What do you got
well.
there, by the way?
So I've got the premium lager.
You're going to love it. Okay, on the mic. 3, 2.
Okay, cheers.
All right, here, cheers. I see friends drinking beer, saying, how do you do?
Mike, before you go into your questions, I have some questions for you about some stuff in the book, but
stop the music.
I want to show you. Like I said, I have some props here.
Oh, okay. I'll make time for that.
I'm gonna try to put which camera is it here?
Yeah, it's this one.
Is it this one?
Yeah.
Okay, this phone. What is the historical significance of this phone? This is an LG cell phone.
Oh,
it's like a slider.
I'm
phone.
gonna guess you were doing PR for LG when that was launched.
I was, and
I'm gonna guess.
Yeah.
You had a rad event with cool people, and I was invited.
I feel like the very first email I ever sent you was to a launch event for this phone. This is the LG Shine phone. This phone I still think is pretty fucking cool. It's like metal. I actually used this for a while. Here, why don't you play with that for a while I describe
Better late than never, right?
Yeah,
Cam?
but we did a really cool event for that.
I have it. Do you want me to? I have it now. So.
Yeah.
And we're going back, by the way, 2007.
Yeah, within the scope of the track changes era. So I thought this tied together.
And you were at Cameron.
Oh my God, yeah. Okay, it was that fun. That's amazing.
Okay, you are cordially invited to an exclusive experience, the latest in luxury, LG Shine phone and Burke's newest diamond collection, Citique. I guess it's called Citique. I can't even say that word. Okay. Please find your invite to this exclusive engagement below. And it's like the what, the when, which was October 11th, 2007.
Yeah.
It was at the Burke's Toronto Manulife Center. Please RSVP to Cameron Gordon, and then your corporate email at the time. And there's a phone number and another woman's name and her email and her phone number. This is where I tapped out. I'm being very honest. I know myself.
Yeah.
I didn't even reply. But this is the line where you completely lost me, okay? And then
what's
you were
that?
completely ignored. This line.
PR people, listen up.
Cocktail attire for women, jacket required for men.
No shorts allowed.
So one, I'm being very honest. You could be giving away Rolls Royce cars, okay?
Yeah.
If I'm invited, and then maybe this makes me a dick. I don't know. I think it makes me true to myself or whatever. But once I see jackets required for me to attend your event so you could show me this fucking phone in the hopes I'll write about it and talk about it as an influencer, I'm out.
Okay, so Phil Collins, no jackets required.
100%. And so I know I read this. I read every email I get. Okay.
Yeah.
So I read this email and I didn't know who you were. So there was no
It's like almost 20
friendship.
years ago.
October 10th, 2007, which is almost, you're right. That's about 19 years ago. And knowing I would react the exact same way today. So it didn't matter that it was an exclusive event. I also don't respond well to the words like Berks.
Okay.
I know that sounds like...
What if it was the Ellis Burks? Would that interest you?
I hate
it probably would.
Red Sox.
Oh, yeah, right.
Fuck those guys. He's gone, right? Isn't he dead?
Is he dead? Ellis Burks?
Why do I think... Oh, God. Maybe it's
Okay,
Green.
let's
Green?
check.
Maybe there's another guy.
Oh, Mike Greenwell.
Mike Greenwell.
The Gator.
That's
the
who
Gator.
I'm confusing him with. My apologies.
Yeah.
If I caused any panic. I don't want to spread these mistruths, but I'm looking now, and it's a lovely. There's a cocktail. Yeah, I just it was
a great event.
Happened. So
yeah.
do you? Obviously,
Open
I missed
bar.
out on a great event, but
Sure.
I mean, I got invited to an opera, and I wore my shorts. I biked over in shorts, and there were people dressed to the nines.
Yeah,
You know,
give me that back. That
Is that
belongs
going
to
in
the museum.
the museum
Let's
of
go in my
Cam
pocket,
Gordon
but
PR?
might be making an
Oh, but
appearance
and
in a couple
also,
weeks.
last
yeah.
thought on this: until they discontinued the phone, I actually rocked LG phones.
Oh yeah, well, I was honestly very lucky to do PR for LG. I was working for an agency called High Road Communication at the time.
They're big time.
Yeah, and I'll just say this: they were spending so much money. So not only did I get to go to all these incredible events at Berks and elsewhere, I went to Las Vegas to CES. I went to a press junket in Paris because we wanted to show like 5 journalists.
Ontario or
No, in you know,
It's called France.
In Europe, over there.
over there.
Yeah, like we were taking the journalists out for dinner. We were because they wanted to show the journalists the steam washer. So I'm trying to remember who was on that. It was
I
like
didn't get invited to that one, by the way.
You were not on, but like City Line was there and Chatelaine.
Wow.
So again, like, and actually,
They spent the bucks.
Yeah, just so I don't bury the lead. There's a copy of a book. That's for you to keep. I
Okay.
know you've.
Well, I have questions. I know you're asking me questions, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that phone was the first ever email I got from a Cameron Gordon. I
Yeah.
don't delete Gmails. I'm looking at it right now.
So, okay, here's a question. This will get into some of the stuff I sort of want to ask you, but that was 2007. So
Yeah.
TorontoMike.com was what?
Oh,
4 years old at
No,
the
no,
time?
well,
Well, a bit
no.
no, I guess longer.
so TorontoMike.com launches as a personal homepage in 1999.
Okay, so you'd been on
But
like
the blog, it switched from personal homepage to a blog in 2002.
Yeah. But like I think that era is really interesting because prior to that, I don't think we were inviting, respectfully, bloggers to these high-end events, but then slowly a little Toronto Mike and a little Zach Bussey and a little Casey Stewart and a little
FOTM Ramey the Minx.
Ramey the Minx was in the mix, and Lauren O'Neill,
She was
Lauren
in the mix.
O'Neill, and then we got, Evan Carmichael and, a real cottage industry. And this is all really at the dawn of like social media too. Like MySpace was kind of popping at this time. I think Facebook was around. I think Facebook is 2006. But it was really before like the influencer era as we know it. So were you if you recall, like were you getting invited to other stuff at this time? Were you starting to? Were people starting to take notice of what you're doing?
I was definitely getting invited to stuff at that time. Yeah.
Okay.
So I felt like it started cooking in 2004.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought bringing that phone tonight sort of ties together.
No, I love it. I wish I got to keep that phone.
No.
Because it would have a home in the studio here.
Exactly.
Stu likes how it's authentically collected itself.
Absolutely. I'll take some pictures of the book amongst all the bric-a-brac with the byway bag and Georgie Animal Steel.
So do you want to take turns asking questions? Like I wanted to, because I read the book.
Yeah, ask me.
So I got a copy because I had a PDF and now I have an actual physical copy. So
Sure.
if you don't mind if I just reread chapter 11 real quickly here.
Go right ahead.
What did you think of Stu Stone in his reading of chapter 11? So not all of chapter 11, but he did read the first few paragraphs. And if people want to get how you give a little taste of a book?
Yeah.
Stu Stone read the first few paragraphs of chapter 11.
Yeah. Will be the audio book. Maybe we'll get
Does he
him in to
get that
read.
gig? He's trying to get that gig.
Yeah, he did a good job. I mean,
fastidious is tough for Stu.
it is, yeah. But anyway, people have to read this. You can hear sort of what I said about Toronto Mike and Stu Stone on that. But I do think that anecdote, that whole chapter is about blogging. But
right, that's where I show up. That's why I'm.
And this is
focusing
right in
on
the
it.
same era. I'm emailing you. Do you want to come to the LG event? This is right around the same time. You're also blogging that. Oh my God, Martin Streak is no longer with us, and you became the source of truth. We've talked about this before. You've blogged about this many times. But again, that's a real turning point when like bloggers were the tip of the spear for like actual news cycles. And I feel like you've said before, I feel like you said that was a big traffic driver to your website.
My goodness, yes it was, it was. And it's also frightening as fuck because I'm basically corroborating best of my ability. I'm not going to report somebody's dead if it's possible they're not dead, but it's still scary to go first when somebody's dead.
Yeah, and plus just this huge wave of traffic that you probably weren't used to, and you certainly, this wasn't the era now where you have hours and hours and hours of video online. Sure.
The way it had historically worked would be I would be the first and sometimes only person to write about a popular DJ getting fired. Like this was over and over. So
to this day.
To this day, actually, yeah. So one example, because I'm now working for the man, but in 2006, I wrote about Humble Howard getting fired, and I had this story about, for the first time in his life, believe it or not, Humble Howard had been fired because Mix 99.9 had turfed him a year after they turfed Freddie P. I also wrote about that, but that didn't get the traffic that the Humble Howard firing got. And I think it's because Humble Howard was the morning show on Mix 99.9, and there became a time when people all went to Google and threw something, keywords to this effect. It might be, where's Humble Howard? Or Humble Howard gone from Mix, or Humble Howard fired ? Things like that were being searched by, thousands of people. Where's Humble Howard? Because they don't announce Humble Howard's gone.
Plus, frankly, there's just way less websites back then.
Yeah, and
so
I would rank very highly. In fact, I ranked number 1 for that. So all the traffic, and then people would leave comments, and that would sort of fuel other keywords, right? This is back pre-AI day and everything, when somebody would leave a comment with content, and that would be, for SEO purposes, that would attract people looking for that kind of thing. So it became like sort of a self-fulfilling one-stop shop for the truth, because there wasn't mainstream media focus anymore on radio like in the past.
Yeah, I mean, that time on the internet, and again, this is in the book, but kind of the everyone's on social media, but post some, people that still don't have email. That in-between period where everyone's online, but Facebook isn't quite Facebook yet.
Right. And there is no Twitter yet.
Yeah. I mean, that was a great time. This was RSS feeds, it was blog aggregators.
I'm still RSS guy. So it's funny to read your book. I really loved your book. Yeah. One point before you even go any further is that I, and you have noticed, and you wrote about it in your book, but the old internet is disappearing.
That's a key theme in the book. I mean, it took me a long time to write this, as you know. I think it was 7 or 8 years overall. And once I was done, and once it was done and dusted, it's fuck, almost everything in here is gone. I actually went back and I rewrote the entire final chapter because of that, because I started reading about, these have kind of become buzzwords, but link rot and digital decay. You might have seen some other articles about this, about how just websites are disappearing left and right. Oh. Our phones, this is like a kid's toy at this point. It's almost like recycle my electronics. What's that?
Recyclemyelectronics.ca.
Yeah. And you think YouTube, you think Facebook, you think TikTok is always going to be here. It's probably not. Very few things are forever, and certainly not in the technology world. So that's a big theme in the book. And the number one sort of entity, and actually I'm not going to say this because this actually gets into something I'm going to ask you in a bit, but this will get around. But it's a good reminder, don't take for granted that any of these things will be around, or also just be mindful of how much time you're spending on any of this. Think of, I don't know if you were on iTunes. I spent hours, the renaming stuff and the metadata.
Me too.
Yeah. And what do we have to show for it? Jack shit. I don't even know where it is. I can open
this drawer, Cam Gordon, and show you the physical hard drive that still holds my 6 billion MP3s.
Great.
But all that metadata, I took great pride in making sure it was to my standards.
Yeah, and it was probably kind of fun, and it's fun to catalog, and that's totally cool.
Is it tragically hip, or the tragically hip, or is it tragically hip, the?
Yeah, exactly. So, but again, what do we have to show for it? I don't know.
Is it Tom Cochran and Red Rider? Is
oh my
it just
God.
Tom Cochran?
Or Tom Petty and the Heartbreak. Yeah.
Right. Elvis Costello, and is it Elvis Costello and
the Imposters and the Attractions, or everybody. Right. Yeah.
So all of that was decisions had to be made, and I took that very seriously. But in your book, again, so the old internet's disappearing, but this book is somebody with a Canadian perspective. That's key. I'm going to revisit that in a moment. But you took great effort over several years to document this disappearing internet that I came of age in, and many others did. And I'm going to say right now, thank you for doing that.
No, you're welcome. I mean, we've talked about this topic a lot with also folks like Jeremy Hopkin and Mark Weisblad. To say nothing of AI and sort of the slop fest that we live in, but all of these like really shitty Instagram accounts and Facebook groups where you see the same photos over and over, like Toronto memories, and like Jeremy Hopkin, I feel like is going to have like he's going to go like completely postal if he sees like one more of these groups. If it's like, oh, there's Joseph Bloor, I feel like I see that
That's
photo.
a good example. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, there's no effort put into it. So it's like the people that are actually, I was trying to like actually do the work. Like this stuff is all hiding it's not even hiding in plain view.
But someone has to dig it up and polish it and then give it some context and then present it to the seeking public.
Yeah. And that's
like
why
someone's got to do, that's work.
Yeah. But
somebody's got to do it. Somebody has to give a shit enough to get that right and then put it out there. And I've been trying to do that since 2002.
Yeah. Well, like one thing that I'm very happy about this book, this is not like an underground book. Everything in here is completely mainstream. It's all lived experience, but it's all fallen out of sight because the URLs are dead or the magazines are out of publication or the phones. We don't use the phones anymore.
You're so right. Now,
you don't call me anymore.
Call me maybe?
Sure.
That's actually technically an FOTM jam, but you already know that. Okay. Yeah, the Marianas Trench guy, Josh.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Rayner? Josh, right. That guy.
He was a nice guy.
Definitely. Yeah. I had a great time with him in the basement, and we had a great chat. But I was going to say, like, for example, Now magazine, okay, Now, like, there was a wealth of very important content. So, like, you're the expert. Can we still access all that content that was on the Now Toronto website?
Well, I mean, and this was documented when Brandon Gonez bought it. One thing he did when he took control of Now, you may recall they actually had prior, during the Michael Holiday era, they had the full archives of Now online in PDF. So every single issue, hard copy issue, available in PDF format.
Hook that
on
to
the
my
Now.
veins, yeah.
Yeah. And then Brandon bought it and he took it down. And again, that's his choice. He's the new owner. It's, it's probably a lot of
It's like when Bell
room.
bought Chum and they took down all the Chum charts.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, as far as I know, the place that if I want to see old back issues, I hoof it down to the Toronto Reference Library, go on the second floor. I think I showed you some photos from this. It's still on microfiche. So you talk about like putting in the work. So I spent a few weekends just going through the microfiche of seeing all these old, concert listings and all the Norm Wilner stuff and Glenn Sumi, and it's all there. But that's kind of what we used to have to do to research too. So even though it's like it's not searchable unless you specifically know what you're looking for, it is there. But that seems like that's a really big part of Toronto's cultural history that is really not accessible. And my worry is that's just gonna like fade away. Like once that microfiche is gone, the whole thing could be gone,
We'll be old men under a tree somewhere telling the kids about junkhouse.ca.
Yeah, but like, here's the, like, will anyone care? Like, what's the Toronto Telegram, for example? Like, we all know.
Folded.
Yeah, it's like, but, people our age, it's like, okay, we're aware it exists. And we even like history. We're sort of the demo for people who should care. But it's like, I'm not going to go back and look what that's all about. Like I might see it in passing somewhere or something written about it, and maybe I'll read it, maybe I won't.
Well, the first step in all of this is like I said earlier, giving a shit. Do you ever worry about the fact that so few people care? Like care about the fact that the old internet is disappearing?
No. Well, I've said this to you, like I when I wrote this book, I really didn't want to be a book about nostalgia, which is really, really hard because it was very fun to write and it's very fun to be on these old websites and playing with old phones and, speaking to people who, were there. But I really just wanted to show like, this is what happened. I'm not saying it was good, bad, better, worse. It was just different, but I think in writing the book, it did like really hit me over the head too. Whether you're like an AOL chat room or a Yahoo group or WhatsApp group or, a Twitter DM thread, it's all kind of the same thing. It's just in different platforms and different formats and different devices, but it's all kind of just people talking to other people. And that's one of the great things about the internet, as much as a lot of it's kind of shitty. To quote Cory Doctorow in 2026, shittification.
Yeah, perfect.
It's still kind of amazing, the internet. I was in Vancouver. I also got to go visit I don't know if you know that this exists, the Canadian headquarters of the Internet Archive. Did you know this was a thing, Toronto?
I did not know.
The only reason I found out that this place existed was, I think it was this past January. Do you know Takara Small? Do you know who that is?
No.
She's like a freelance tech journalist. She'll show up on CBC and some other places. She actually did a really good podcast for CBC. That was that crypto guy from Canada who disappeared, and like all Quandranga. Do you remember this? This was like a pretty big.
Yeah, at the time I do recall.
Yeah, she did like a short form podcast series. It was really good. Anyway, so I know her just from like being around, and I saw on LinkedIn she's like, oh, she's hosting a panel at the Internet Archive Canada. I'm like, what's the Internet Archive Canada? I didn't know that exists. It's apparently in Vancouver. So I did some digging. I'm like, holy shit. And she was interviewing a guy named Ian Milligan. He's a professor at the University of Waterloo. He actually wrote a whole book about our disappearing internet. The name's escaping me, but it's also a good read. Yeah, I can drop it in the comment section after or something. So when I knew I had to go, I was in Vancouver for an event in late February. I actually reached out to the people running it. I got to visit, and it's kind of just an event space, but it's actually owned by the people who own the Internet Archive. It has a few servers, but it's kind of cool to have a space. And even if it was more symbolic, I took some photos of me at the book. My worry is that I don't know how much time you spend in the Internet Archive, like crawling old websites. Like, I'm guessing probably like once in a while, but
once in a while.
Yeah. My worry is the Internet Archive is going to go away. Wikipedia is going to go away, especially now with
so you mean the Wayback Machine, right?
Wayback Machine. Yeah, exactly. They run, but like Wikipedia and the Internet Archive, especially because they're nonprofits, I worry that they're going to go away.
Yeah, I have the same worry.
Yeah. And especially, given some of the stuff that's happening geopolitically, and you get in the wrong crosshairs of the wrong person, not naming any names, any remarkable figures, those things could be gone overnight, really. Because again, they're not Google, they're not Microsoft, they're not Apple. They're like non-profits that have a lot of people who feel extremely strongly about it, to their credit. But they're really vulnerable too. And with that, that's like a lot of like effort, history that could just go like literally offline.
So I'll tell you what I do. My little part is if there's something I think is really interesting or whatever, I will kind of regurgitate it on torontomike.com as a blog entry, because at least I feel until I die, and hopefully that's not too soon, at least I feel like I have some control over that. This tiny little slice of real estate, I can keep this online. Like these comments on my personal website, torontomike.com, and these, whatever it is, 20,000 pages on torontomike.com, I can personally keep them online. So I can still pull up that post I wrote when I learned Martin Street had taken his own life, and I can still see the 500 comments people left that over the next 24 hours. Shock, disbelief, and love for Martin. Like, I still have that hosted.
Yeah. Well, and again, like a footnote to that, that's why I listen to your podcast. And if I hear something that's like, holy shit, I didn't know that I don't think people know that, I'll go to my... I'm going to rip off the Spider Lady mask, the Fabius Mula moment here. I am Rosie Gray Tio. Let the record show. Yeah.
I've been referencing Rosie Gray Tio on this program for years.
I know.
That's you?
He is I, and I.
Wow. That's like, do you remember Igor Guzenko? Does that name mean anything to you? Right?
It does not.
He would go on TV in the paper bag, and then it was like the outing of Igor Guzenko was like a whistleblower of Russian spies.
Really?
Yeah, this was a thing.
That's not like the Unknown Comic.
No, that's a different
okay.
That's a different paper bag.
Shout out to Igor.
Okay. And by the way, earlier when you were talking about did I know this woman's name or whatnot, and then you dropped a word that's similar to jacket required that I tap out. You use the word crypto, and when once I see there's a podcast about anything to do with crypto or anything to do with crypto, I tap out.
So you're not buying the dip.
So crypto, I probably lost a fortune because of my allergy to this term crypto.
Yeah.
But much like I probably missed out on many a great contact because I completely ignored all events that had a jacket required.
Yeah, but again, you're too busy like mining, rather than mining Bitcoin, you're mining like fun facts that people don't fucking like.
And mind blows.
Yeah, but by the way, like the other day, like Blair Packham's on, he's just casually drops, we met with like Hilly Chris on like 1982, he's got manager jitters. I'm like, You're basically, were you gonna tell us this? Like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Blair.
That does happen. So on this program, that even today with Stu Stone, he dropped a couple of things. And I'm like, haven't I talked to Stu Stone? Like, he's a long haul guy. So if he's been over 100 times and doing quick math, like, haven't I had 300 hours of recorded conversation?
He's like, we're at the water park with Jessica Alba. She didn't know. That would be like the most interesting thing that ever happened to me. Like, really? These guys, I mean, I don't know.
Is it my turn to ask you a question?
Yes.
So, enjoy the book very much, but would you mind, again, I know you're going to pull a Kyprios on me. I should play that clip to give it some context.
That's okay.
Shout out to the VP of
Give
Sales.
you some freebies here.
Because you'll be back for FOTM cast. I think that's in early April, I think. You and Tyler Campbell, the VP of Sales. Love it very much.
A couple of weeks, almost April.
Jeez, I got to start recording.
The Gandharva song coming up next week.
Oh, you know what? Yeah. I'm a little ticked off. I worked so hard to get Mr. Jago. I think his name is Paul Jago.
He's a busy geologist.
I talked to his brother. I did the song for him. And then I'm pretty sure he went on another podcast, and I'm blanking on which one, but he made like a appearance on another podcast, and I was like legit pissed because I had put in literally years of effort, and nobody on this planet was going to care more about that episode, that Gandharva's episode.
Mike, there's no way of knowing. There's no way.
There's no way of knowing.
Go pawn some summer clothes.
Downtime. What was the other big one?
Yeah, Downtime.
Downtime. That was a great fucking. Maybe here's
coffee song. They had like 3 jams.
But shout out to Gandharva's. Guelph.
I think so, yeah. Or London
Guelph.
or something?
I'm going to say Guelph, but I think it's Guelph.
By the way, did you mention we have a special guest coming up in about...
No, but this is your guest, and you're going to carry this, and I'm going to listen and learn and ask some questions. But who is the special guest who's coming up?
So the guest is Steve Pratt. So Steve Pratt is someone I interviewed for the book. He's actually based in Vancouver. So Steve worked not only for CBC Music in the 2000s, where, a lot of those podcasts work with Grant Lawrence and some other people. There's a whole chapter in the book about CBC and their music stuff online. That was really, really interesting. But Steve also worked for YTV. Steve worked for Much Music. Wow. And Steve also worked for AOL, if you can believe it. So
you've got mail.
Yeah, so we're going to ask him about all this stuff. But I thought it'd be good to bring on...
What time is that? So 7:30 now.
Yeah, so that's going to be about 15 minutes or so.
I got to get to this. I have a couple of key things. So I read the book.
Hit me. Thank you.
I felt like, this is made for guys like me, but there's a lot of guys like me. So how do people get it?
I'd say just like Google it and you'll find it at all the major
Gordon track changes.
Yeah, exactly. But I'll say all the major online booksellers. I won't name names, the obvious ones, or you can also, I would recommend if you want support your local indie, even if they don't show it on their website, ask if they have stuff through Ingram distribution. But if you do go to the Instagram account, again, go to that link tree. It has all the places. You can order it from Book City.
Am I allowed to? So I did read the book, and I did call out one spelling error. Am I allowed to say that?
Sure. Go right ahead.
There was a reference to the great FOTM Gino Vanelli.
Yes.
And I couldn't help but notice you spelt Vanelli wrong.
2N. Well, if nothing else, that shows that AI didn't write this book. So.
Right. So let me ask you about a source, a web space that you talk about in great detail.
Sure.
SlowNet. I know we don't have a lot of time, and it is in the book in great detail. But just for give us a taste, what was SlowNet and why was it so important?
Yeah, so SlowNet was I guess at different times it was a message board / mailing list. It started about 1993. So when you think of the Arcus Sloan as a popular band, they'd probably been fairly well known across Canada for not even a year
since
at
91.
That point.
Oh, so yeah.
Yeah, like
91.
a year, maybe a year and a half, not even. There were, people had seen Underwhelmed on Much Music or whatever.
Sounds why.
Yeah, so I mean, SlowNet it's really early on in the book because it's a really early example of fan community. And it's literally, it's like anything else on the internet. It's just, like finds like, water finds water. It's just the fans found each other, and it's people talking about Sloan. It's it's typical stuff that people who like a band or a topic, they're going deep on the details. Oh, they're recording a new album. Oh, I saw them in Halifax, or I saw them in New York City, or I saw them in Vancouver, and the show is this. And, oh, my friend knows Jay, and he said this. And, oh, what about these other bands? So we got,
They were named after Tara Sloan.
Yeah, so
Sam the Record Man.
Exactly. So people talk about Eric's Trip and Hardship Post and Thrush Hermit and Jail.
Sure.
Yeah, and all these other bands. So, again, it was a really good example. I spoke to James Covey, who was one of the guys who started it. And it was interesting talking to him again in like 93, 94, how quickly he was able to get close to the band. So he was like based in Halifax, and obviously it's, it's a fairly small city relative to Toronto. But the Sloan guys they seem like generally supportive. Like, I don't know if they fully got it. They still are. Yeah. And it was all new. Like, they didn't know, James didn't know, nobody knew. But they said, oh, this is a good way to, kind of keep people talking about us online. And again, there wasn't that many websites. So one of the fun things about like going back on the Internet Archive, it's there's a lot of like before they were famous moments on that. So while I was going through like the old SlowNet archives, I saw there was a poster named Jeremy Gara. Do you know who Jeremy Gara is?
No, sir.
So he eventually went on to become the drummer for I think to this day for the Arcade Fire, and he's just some guy on SlowNet. He was asking about there was a concert called Woolstock, which was I think it was put on by the Sonic Onion people on it was gonna be like a farm space outside of somewhere like Flamborough Downs or like somewhere out there outside Hamilton. And he was wondering if it was going to be canceled because like the permit fell through and they moved it to like some club shows in Hamilton at X Club and whatnot. But I found an old post from a pint-sized Jeremy Gara just saying, "Is Woolstock canceled? What do we do?" And 10 years later, he's on Saturday Night Live. He's playing with David Bowie. He's playing with like David Byrne and whatnot. Wow. So it's these little.
But your book also makes a great point that once SlowNet has these, Canadian music fans discussing new Canadian music, Brave New Waves can, source out new music from SlowNet.
That's right. Yeah. So James, one of the guys who was behind SlowNet, he started to be pulled in by Patty Schmidt and the Brave New Waves crew as like the East Coast correspondent. And there's like a really early example of like quote unquote internet reporter of just talk about what's going on. And James, he worked in I want to say like film production. He worked on like Pit Pony, and I think he might have helped build one of the first websites for Street Sense.
Wow.
Yeah, Fit for the Pit. Of course, Ken Pompadour.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, he wasn't a journalist.
I loved that show so much.
I still love it. It's great. Yeah. Benita Ha and Jamie.
What a crush I had on Benita Ha.
Yeah. And, of course, Jonathan Torrens.
FOT Jonathan Torrens.
Yeah. They're like, oh, you're on the internet. You're talking about this. How about you come on, once a week or, once a month or whatever. What's happening on the East Coast? What's happening down at the Marquee Club and whatnot. So like it quickly, and I'm not surprised because like Brave New Waves was very like, that was underground music. So I'm not surprised that they were like early adopters in going to the net to find people. But yeah, it was a cool story, and it was a great place to start the book too. It really was, this, and now we're off. We start seeing like stuff like that happening.
Well, so I'm looking at my floating shelves or whatever the hell Stu Stone called it. But I got the new Sloan here.
Yeah.
But then a couple of spots over, I've got a classic Junkhouse album, and junkhouse.ca was an early example. Yeah. I mean, it was interesting to see. I mean, because they were, God, I'd have to check which they were on one of the big, I want to say it was like EMI.
I mean, one of the interesting things about all the major labels putting together their first websites in the late 90s, this was also the time they were all getting bought and sold and consolidating and whatnot, and all of a sudden like Polygram and EMI are gone. It kind of ended to a point where like there's really just the three now with like Sony, Warner, and Universal. So I want to say like Junkhouse was like on EMI, but they work with like the label team, and they put together like a really cool website. It actually had some original artwork from Tom Wilson, I know, on there, which again, like think going on to the internet, whether you had AOL or whatever around 1996 when I think it's Sony Music. Was it Sony? Okay. That's my memory. Yeah. 93, they signed to Sony Music. Yeah. Yeah. So that's around the time, a lot of people have AOL. Think of like getting like a really detailed website to even load at that time. It's got this beautiful piece of art that Tom Wilson did that just like the splash page. To get into their website, it looks great through the Wayback Machine, but like I'd be curious how many people could actually access that website at the time. So with Sony at the time, they were also hiring like a lot of people from like the quote unquote new media world, which is where someone that came into my life later and yours to some degree as well, Jennifer Hollett, worked for Sony on the street team that she was able to parlay into opportunities with Much Music and politics, and obviously now the Walrus, and just one of the good ones.
Absolutely. Yeah. Big fan over here. Okay. And there's an event where you launch this book coming up, right? Like, when is this event? Stu was asking me, what day is this book launch?
Yeah. But let the record show I totally told Stu about this.
Okay, 'cause he didn't remember.
Well, he needs to check his text messages.
Like, I know it's in my calendar because I'm going to be there.
Yeah, you're going to be there. You're going to be a featured speaker.
How long do I get on stage? Because you told me 2 minutes.
We're going to talk about that after.
Yeah, I have to practice for my Elmo gig.
Yeah, so the event is Wednesday, March 25th. The venue is Handlebar in Kensington Market. That's at the south end, just north of Dundas. And what this event's going to be, it's going to be a book launch event. I'm going to have copies of the book available for sale. I'm going to say a few words, but I really, when I said, okay, if I'm going to do a book launch, I want to let the voices who actually did the work to like have their moment and to tell their stories. So the way this is going to work, there's going to be, well, you're going to do like a big opening.
2 minutes.
Yeah, a big 2 minute opening.
Do I have to wear a jacket?
No jacket required for that one. So you're going to say a few words. I'm going to say a few words. Then we're going to have 2 panel conversations. It's going to be drawn from I'm saying like the worlds of media and tech and music. So there's going to be some FOTMs amongst these 2 panels.
Can I guess?
Go right ahead.
Alan Cross.
Alan Cross will be there. So
okay, I have another guess.
Who else?
And then I'm going to have a question.
You're looking at your screen, but go right ahead.
Sammy Cohn. I'm not looking. There's nothing here. It's memory.
That's true. Okay, yes.
I'm not Stu. When I read these things, I retain it.
Yeah, Sammy Cohn, real estate agent, drummer, amongst other things, will be there. He'll be on a panel about kind of the major label system.
Frank Yang.
Frank Yang, yes, a key figure. One of like the biggest bloggers, not just in Canada, music bloggers of the 2000s.
Chrome Waves.
Worldwide known Chrome Waves, yeah, like huge. And Frank was awesome. Frank also like wrote a blurb on the back of the book, and he's like a key part of this story, like a real innovator, and a guy similar to yourself, like did it all himself. He just, again, go check out Chrome Waves. The archive's still up there.
Okay. Any other names off the top of your head? I don't have it in front of me, but
yeah. So we got Frank. We've got Tabassum Siddiqui. She's been like a longtime music writer. We've got Ryan B. Patrick. He works for CBC Books. He's going to be moderating the second panel.
Wow.
Ryan also wrote for Exclaim. Their panel's fun. So this could be Ryan, Tabassum, Alan, and Frank. All 4 of them are also Players Prize jurors. So that's going to be very cool. And
that's rarefied air.
Yeah, and then the first panel is going to have Tara Deschamps. She's going to be the moderator. She's a Canadian Press business reporter that I know, and she's excited to come out. And yeah, Sammy's going to be on that panel. And then we're going to have Alana Schachter. She actually worked at Sony with Jen Hollett on the digital team, so worked on a lot of these websites. She might have, we can ask her about the Junk House website. Maybe she worked on that. And then we have Pete Watson. He worked, I want to say, at Warner. But he was actually in a band, the Crawling King Snakes. I don't know if you remember this band. I sort of remembered like kind of a bluesy.
I have their entire catalog over here. No, I don't know this
there
band.
You go. Maybe they're on that hard drive. You got So he was actually in that band. Then he worked on like campus street teams, and then he was actually recruited to go work for, I think, MCA. Which was
Working for MCA. That's a Skinnerd song.
Was it? Okay, there you go. But he was sort of one of these guys. He's on the street team, but he also kind of gets computers. So he started working on a lot of the early websites for MCA. He actually did stuff with the Watchmen when they were on that label.
Okay,
and then,
can I? Okay, yeah. You finish. I don't want to interrupt this promo for this event that I'll be at.
Yeah.
And Alan Cross and us, and I might throw down.
I cannot wait. That's the perfect venue.
Why don't
Your
you put us on
book
stage
launch
to kick things off? Put us on together.
The Joe Cap, Angela Musk moment.
That's all I can think about.
Yeah. Anyway, this is a free event. Everyone's welcome. Handlebar. Come check it out. It's gonna be a fun night. Also, happy hour drink specials at the bar. I learned during my last
Happy hour is here.
Yeah, so there'll be something for everyone in there.
I'm looking at Road Apples on vinyl over here. That's Little Bones. Okay, let me ask you just one last question about Sammy Cohn. who gifted me this Brian Linehan
He did.
photo over here.
Out on tour this summer again, the Watchmen. I play some shows.
I saw them last year. I can't remember when that was, but I saw them at the Danforth Music Hall. They still fucking rock. I fucking love that band. And then I did see at a big rec show, I saw Danny Graves open, like just solo.
Sure.
And he played a TMLX event.
You did.
Are you going to be at the Elmo gig on May 21 when I'm on stage?
I'll have to check the social experiment. I'll have to check my calendar for that one.
Okay, because that's a big fucking deal. Just want to make sure it's on your radar. I want you to tell me a bit about the 1996. And by the way, my personal history is I did not see the internet until university.
Yeah.
And then I went to U of T, so I didn't see it in high school. At U of T, I don't have any internet memories from year 1, believe it or not. But year 2, I made daily trips to the library at U of T where I would check my email and log on to sites like CNNSI and these different websites and different forums. And I was online pretty much daily by second year of university. And let me see, I graduated in 93. So 95, I'm saying, around there. 94, 95 is when I get online.
Yeah, like it's hard talking about this stuff without lapsing back in my day, we didn't have this and stuff. But the whole concept of like leaving, it's like, I want to go on the internet.
Yeah, you got to go to a station.
I'm going to leave my house. Right. So one thing I touch on is there's a lot of like moments that we don't really talk about, but were really important. And they're just these things that sort of happen in the background, but actually fundamentally change our relationship with the internet. So I'm just going to rattle off a few here. So this was actually something hopefully we'll still get to play a bit of word association. Maybe we can bring Steve into word association too.
Yeah, bring him in.
Yeah. But when your internet went from like 5 hours a month to unlimited, like I don't know about you, like we grew up, we had, my first time on the internet was like AOL in high school. We had,
I had
a
company called ACC.
Okay, so you're like indie, you're like more punk.
But they came up because I was married very young.
Yeah.
And we were living at like Charles Street and Young, but we were pretty close to campus, and they were getting students into student plans. Dial-up at first, but it was a company called ACC.
Yeah. Now, do you remember, was it unlimited or did you have like a finite? Because
I do know because my mom had an account that was definitely limited.
Yeah.
I think mine might have been unlimited.
Okay.
But it was dial-up.
Interesting. Because I don't really remember the moment, because I'm like you. I went to McMaster and I was there from 1996 to 2000. My first year I was in residence. I was one of like maybe 5 people on my floor at a computer. So like our room would almost be like the computer lab. I'd let anyone use it because no one had a computer. And I had like an AOL account, but it was like 10 hours a month. So like,
right.
Like the schmuck down the hall, he's like, oh, I want to go in the chat room and like raise hell or whatever. Like fight cyber fights or whatever, 19-year-olds on the internet are doing. But those hours would be like, they'd be gone, after that. So I think when like it became all you can eat, that was a really big step.
Sure.
The proliferation of Wi-Fi was huge because all of a sudden you can take your laptop. You're not just like.
Oh, but before that, I feel like when it was Simpatico from Bell and At Home from Rogers, when you had the speed difference, like suddenly you can go on Napster and get your MP3s in a very reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff because this gets into Napster's like a good tipping off point for the next one, which is also when like CD burners became like standard issue. Because it used to be like an external thing, but then there became a point where like it all of a sudden it's in every CPU or it's in every laptop.
Right.
And then like the burning of CDs became rampant, but even the burning of CDs era was pretty short because then the iPod came and guess what? Now the iPod's gone. So this gets back to like, this stuff is not around for long. None of this stuff was around. Like Napster was not long. It was what, like a year and a half or something? The iPod was 6 years, even something like the BlackBerry. Less than a decade, it's sort of heyday. So again, the fleeting nature of this like really hit home writing this of like all this technology.
You documented it. So back when I shouted out Sammy Cohn for gifting me this Brian Linehan picture, it's because I just wanted, before I check in on our guest and see if we can bring in our guest, 1996, there was a webcast featuring The Watchmen.
Of course.
You covered it in pretty great detail in track changes. But what was significant about this, concert by the Watchmen that they streamed online way back in 1996.
Yeah, so
hard to believe.
If you go to the Instagram account, I actually posted an article about this monumental event that was in RPM magazine.
Are you burping on Toronto Mike?
A little bit.
Tell me, did you burp with Connie Thiessen?
I'd have to go back and listen. Anyway, so this concert, this was in 1996. And again, everyone's on dial-up. A lot of people only have 5 hours a month or whatever. But they played a live concert on the internet. Now, something that you might not know, Mike, maybe, I don't know if I mentioned this. They actually recorded this at Manta Sound.
Tears are not enough.
Thank you. But
That's my sound, man.
Yeah, but this was co-presented with Now Magazine, and Sam the Record Man was involved. So like everyone, Alan Cross was the host. It was just like a greatest hits, like the Coachella of this time. But it's something hopefully like Pete Watson will be able to talk about, because he actually worked on this live stream, and just hearing some of the stories about how almost like rickety the internet was. Like it was like this tangle of wires, and it's going in from like the lamppost to get electricity. Like it really was a real.
Were people using Real Player? Like how the hell were they pulling this down?
We'll talk to Sammy and Pete. I don't know, but
That's the Real Player era.
Yeah, but they somehow like pulled it off. The fact they would even try it is almost admirable.
Yeah.
But I think back then, regardless of whether it worked, the fact that it existed was kind of the story. The fact that it's like, look at us, we're MCA and we're cutting edge.
Yeah. Being the first. It's exciting. Any truth to the rumor that Sammy Cohn, he took a limousine to that Mantis?
I would be shocked. Those Winnipeg boys are far too humble.
This is going to be a podcast award-worthy segue. I'm pissed off that I can't seem to get Mark Holmes on Toronto Mike, and I'm really pissed off. And I think it's just because I just want to talk about that limousine. It was for famine relief in Ethiopia.
Yeah. Well,
and he took a limo.
I say between that and, of course, Joni Mitchell, her famous comment that her stomach was growling and she was starving as she was recording. It's like
she had just heard about cows from Jane Siberry for the previous hour, right?
Yeah.
Because Jane's in that doc that we all watched. And by the way, it was the anniversary of the Tears Are Not Enough deep dive that you and I did. And I feel like that contribution, putting that into the World Wide Web where people can search it and transcribe it and they can listen to it, I think that was important.
Well, we've seen that the updates from that episode show up in like articles. And Dean McTaggart, did you is it Dean McTaggart or Taggart? McTaggart, yeah.
Did Rosie Gray Teo, now that we know that was you, that's the mind blow from this episode.
Sure.
Because it is on Wiki that he was there, but he says he wasn't there.
Yeah, I mean, and I saw it somewhere else. So if he says he's not there, it's also like Barry Harris was like listed on. There was some article, and that's like that didn't make sense. Yeah. Why don't we bring in Steve? I think he's waiting in the room. I feel like we can cover a lot of the same ground.
Look, if he was waiting, I would have let him in a long time ago. He's not in the waiting room for my
weird.
Zoom.
Okay.
I don't know what Zoom he's on. Did I create two?
Yeah, I think you might have.
Okay, well. Geez, then I will exit this one. Let's do this in real. I like seeing how this cake gets baked here.
Yeah.
So, because I've been looking for him. So let me end this Zoom.
Why don't you do your sponsors? I'll send it to you. Could we do that?
Yeah. Oh my goodness gracious. Can I do the sponsors? Palma Pasta has sent over a lasagna for you, Cam Gordon. Delicious Italian food from Palma Pasta. They catered my daughter's 10th birthday party this past weekend. A good time was had by all. We love Palma Pasta. You're already drinking some Great Lakes beer. I have more for you to take home with you. You can even give a couple of cans to the lovely MF, whoever that may be. I'd also like to give some love to Ridley Funeral Home. Brad Jones was here like a couple of hours ago, and we recorded a new episode of Life's Undertaking, and we talked about a song that was his wedding song. And at a Rod Stewart concert yesterday in Hamilton, Jody, who is Brad Jones's wife, she learned what the song was really about. And they've been married 34 years, and she just clued into something thanks to Rod Stewart's big mouth in Hamilton yesterday. And we had a pretty great chat about that. Shout out to Rod Stewart. And of course, we already shouted out recyclemyelectronics.ca and Nick Iones, who has an event in April 2nd. He is interviewing Brad Bradford, another Brad, I'll be there recording it.
Mayoral candidate.
Is he? Is he running?
Brad Bradford?
Yeah, I'm just fucking with you.
Okay.
Yes, Brad.
I'm trying to get the Zoom to work.
I can just search my email for. Did I send it to you by email?
Yeah, here. I'm gonna. This is gonna be a bit weird. I'm gonna send this to you by DM on Instagram because I don't think you're on.
Do what you gotta do.
I don't think you're on the Bird platform anymore.
I'm not checking it, but I haven't deleted it. But I'm now on Instagram. I'm now going to
check your DMs. I just slid into your DMs.
Check the OR. You like it so far? Check the OR. There you go. I see a little message has popped in. Why'd you send me a dick pic, Cam? That's not cool,
that was a bonus. That's for later.
That was a boner.
Focus on the Zoom.
Did you say that was a boner? Okay, so I'm now going to start this Zoom, and
let's see who's in there.
We'll apologize profusely that we had a different Zoom open. Let's see who is in the Zoom
chat roulette here.
Oh, Steve Pratt is here. Should we let him
Excellent. Yeah.
Oh, should I let him in? Oh, what the hell? Mr. Pratt, I presume.
Yes, how's it going?
Good. So you can't see Cam, but here I am punching him in the nose right now.
Yeah, I'm just off camera. Sorry about the mix-up, although maybe it's appropriate, Steve. We're talking about the history of the internet, and we fuck up the
Well, I
Zoom
did have
links,
a Zoom open. I just had the wrong Zoom open.
That's okay. There's so many links. And anyway, we found you, Steve. Thank you so much for joining us, and it's great to have you here. We've just done about an hour or so on the book, and we did sort of set you up your background with the CBC and other companies. So how do you want to just, Mike? I think maybe I'll just ask Steve a few questions and you
host
just jump in.
And I'll just chime in and I'll listen because I'm very curious about this. And I'm honored that Steve Pratt is now an FOTM.
Yeah,
friend
welcome.
of Toronto Mike.
And Steve,
there you go.
I'm
excited too. I can't believe we actually have not done this or met before. I know you have like a prolific podcasting history and blogging and everything too.
Well,
so
that's
it's
my
really nice to finally
oversight.
meet you.
Listen, I have a few glaring oversights, and that's one of them.
I was gonna say this is like the Spider-Man meme, like the two podcast gurus like pointing at each other, like meeting. So Steve, where are you dialing in for the listeners? Where are you joining us from today?
I am coming from my basement in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Excellent. I'm in my basement in
Look at this, the Toronto Mike basement.
Toronto,
this is the Steve Pratt
Ontario.
basement. So
right.
yeah.
There you go.
Cam, I don't know. I dug this out just for today. I don't know if you can see this. This is like very small, but this is like an old CBC Radio 3 hoodie from the mid-aughts.
Oh my God.
I'm fully decked out in my old gear. So
that's awesome. I did. We spent some time talking about the Internet Archive and the Wayback Machine, and in my research, even subsequent to me chatting with you for the book, I did see some photos you with Grant Lawrence and Lana Gay and some of the other greats from back in the day. But Steve, why don't maybe just to set this up? God, I'm trying to think when I interviewed you for this. I feel like it was probably like 3 or 4 years ago because it did take me a while to write this. But why don't, at least for the CBC chapter, tell us how you fit into this whole story and the stuff you and I chatted about in your time at CBC.
Just in terms of like career path sort of thing, in terms of how I ended up there? Or,
yeah. And I know you were there for a while, but why don't we start talking about CBC music, but then also maybe like layer it with your entire CBC journey? Because I know you did a number of different things over there.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I joined in fall of 2004, if I recall correctly. And I had been dying to come out to Vancouver. I'd worked out here before and I'd gone back to Toronto a few times. And I had been working at Much Music, and I told Sukyin Lee at a party, like, I'm dying to get back out to Vancouver. And she was the host of Definitely Not the Opera at that point.
Of course.
And so she put my name in as a referral for a new job as the director of CBC Radio 3. And I met with Jane Chalmers and Krista Harris and Jennifer Maguire at CBC Radio and hit it off with them. But it took quite a while to figure it all out. And I think the reason that they were posting it and looking for it was that they had applied for the satellite radio licenses for CBC.
Of course,
and they really wanted to dig into satellite radio as kind of a future of where radio is going. And certainly a big part of it would be Canadian music. and that they saw Radio 3 because it had these sites like New Music Canada and where artists it was almost like a MySpace site for Canadians who owned their own rights. You could make your own artist page and upload your own music. And they'd recorded a bunch of in studio CBC sessions, and I think they had another site called Roots Music Canada. And anyways, there's a whole suite of sites that had lots and lots of amazing Canadian music on it. And they're like, this is the right unit to think about the future of radio and the future of Canadian music. So I kind of got hired with the mandate to say, merge all these sites into a single music service and make basically an innovation lab to bring new listeners into the CBC, like younger listeners who might not ever listen to radio or watch TV.
Right.
And champion new Canadian music, particularly indie music, and help make it easier to have to make a living being a musician in Canada. So it was kind of a dream gig.
Yeah. And of course, the punchline with all that is like CBC Radio 3 was not a radio station traditionally, as we know it. And why don't we come back to CBC in a second? But you mentioned you're at Much Music. Why don't we go back actually to like your full origin story, be it on the internet or elsewhere? Are you from Vancouver originally, or you mentioned wanting to get back to Vancouver? Like, what's kind of your initial entry point into this media digital world that we're talking about?
Yeah. I moved around a lot as a kid, but like high school and beyond was kind of in the Toronto area actually, and then I went to McGill and got an English degree in Montreal.
Okay.
And
ironic, but sure.
I know, right? Yeah. And it was kind of weird. Like I ended up doing like a lot of improv comedy and stuff at McGill, and it just made me really interested in doing more creative storytelling stuff. Like getting the combination of a literature degree and improv. I was just like, I want to go tell stories and, entertain people.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting a summer job at CFTO in Agincourt, and I had this amazing boss named Liz Lancaster, and she just let me go. It was this show called Eye on Toronto.
Okay.
It was
yeah,
like
of course.
Daytime talk show. And she was amazing. She just let me go out and basically be a reporter and just do all these weird stories all around Toronto. And so I kind of got the media bug through that, and eventually got a job at what became E-Talk. It was like a weekly half hour called E Now.
It's like Dan Duran era.
Yeah, Carla Collins,
Dan Duran. Yeah. So I was working in the background as a junior producer back then.
That's amazing.
And it was really funny. Like I had this bizarre career meeting that sent me to Vancouver, where I was deeply interested in doing comedy, and they just had the comedy network in Agincourt. And I got a meeting with Yvonne Fitzon, who was like the head of the network. And it was about whether I was going to do comedy or whether I was going to go keep doing entertainment journalism out in Vancouver. And he was like, basically in like a 3-minute interview, he's like, you're never going to be funny. You're going to Vancouver. And so I picked up and moved out to Vancouver as this brand new TV station that was a startup from zero called Vancouver Television. And it was like the best assemblage of people. Like it was such a great thing to be part of a startup TV station from zero. So it was also this amazing introduction to Vancouver. And I've never wanted to live anywhere else, even though I've kind of had to go back to Toronto a few times for work.
Sure. And was this a CTV owned station, or this was an independent station? When you describe this time, like we're talking kind of late 90s, when all those like new licenses and like these specialty channels were coming in, and there was just all of a sudden there was this huge need for content. I remember this very well, when like CRTC really opened things up. Yeah,
I'm going to butcher this, but I think at that time, Bayton Broadcasting, which is called BBS, owned CFTO, and they may have owned CTV, but they were not one and the same, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And there was already a CTV station in the Lower Mainland in BC, which I believe is now global. I'm not sure. I'm probably butchering this. I don't know. And so they went in and they opened an independent station called Vancouver Television, which is this really progressive, innovative style of thinking about how to do local TV. Like the closest equivalent would be something along the lines of a Vancouver inspired version of something that would be a bit more like city TV.
I was going to say this.
But wasn't there a Vancouver? That's where Monica Diol went, right?
Yeah, she was the 6 o'clock news anchor.
Okay, so wasn't that owned by Chum City?
No, there was a second TV station, CKVU, that got turned into a city TV in Vancouver later, and Monica actually later went to host the 11 o'clock news there.
Okay,
so it's deeply confusing.
We've had a special FOTM correspondent, Dan O'Toole, talk about going to the opening of the Vancouver City TV, in which when Moses made sure everybody was well plied with white powder.
Okay, so I was not there for that, but I actually worked with Dan O'Toole because I worked at City TV in Vancouver for a little bit, and I was doing sports there, sports and entertainment. It was like,
did
he's
Dan?
great.
At least he was supposed to be on Toronto Mike yesterday, and then his schedule got weird, and we had to push it a couple of weeks. But was Dan dating like a some kind of model of some sort? I'm trying to remember the details, but there's some great Vancouver Dan story about who he was dating at the time.
I don't know, unfortunately, but
that's why we brought you on, Steve. Who was Dan?
And
the dating lives of sports anchors.
Yeah. Fuck this internet stuff. Who is Dan O'Toole?
It's funny though, because I like at Vancouver Television, I met and worked with James Duthie, who's like an unbelievable sportscaster.
Who's an Ottawa guy.
I went to school with Jay Onright, and he's a good friend. And then I ended up working with Dan O'Toole. I'm like, I've never worked in sports.
Could have been on Sports Center.
But all my friends are sportscasters. So
That's amazing. I know that Jay is an Athabasca guy from near Edmonton, Alberta. But James Duthie is so tied to Ottawa.
Yeah, he was like CJOH. Is that right?
Yeah, I know there's a tragic story of how he got the sportscaster gig. There's an infamous murder. Do you remember this story?
Yeah,
the sportscaster got murdered outside the studio.
Yeah.
And then James got that role.
Just slid right in there.
Well, I'm not going to say anything further because I know James was very close to that poor guy who got shot.
He's one of the nicest, most talented people too. Like he could do like 10 other jobs equally as well as he does all the sports stuff at TSN. Like he was one of the best news reporters I've ever seen. Is just a creative storyteller.
Well, Steve, he's the only member of the TSN team that Rogers tried to recruit when they got that the initial 12-year deal for Hockey Night in Canada. Like they actually ended up going with George Stroumboulopoulos, but that's only because James Duthie was unpoachable. He stayed loyal to Bell Media. They upped him, and then his buddies got upped as well, even though they weren't tapped on the shoulder. I'm thinking, this is James Duthie, not James Duthie, Darren
Dutition.
No, not Dutition. Dreger. Darren Dreger, and of course Bobby the great Bob. Who's the guy who's retired now?
Bobby Cox.
No.
Oh, Bob McKenzie.
Yeah, Bob McKenzie.
Of course, yeah.
It's late in the day, Steve. It's like 8:05 over here, and I'm drinking my GLB, and I had a monster marathon episode of Stu Stone well before Cam got here. So my apologies that I can't remember the name, Bob McKenzie.
Yeah, so
all is forgiven.
Steve, was this kind of it sounds like perhaps this is setting up the pathway to Much Music. And again, when I think of Much Music in that era, I think like Terry David Mulligan, I think Much West. This was a bit pre-Nardwuar.
What era are we talking about? What era?
So I went out to Vancouver in 97, and I was there for like a year and a half, and then moved back. And this is so weird, but like I worked at YTV for a while.
Okay.
And there was a whole bunch of like pop musicians that would come through there, like early Jessica Simpson and early Christina Aguilera and boy bands and stuff.
Yeah.
And then it ended up that there was a guy that I worked with at Vancouver Television named Chris Nelson, who ended up being the host of Much West at Much Music.
I remember that
and
guy.
He was one of the guys who referred me to Much. And he and I actually worked together. He was the West Coast guy, and I was doing like Much News with Strombo when he started putting Nardwuar on Much Music. And he and I were both I think the two most excited people about Nardwuar back then, just being like, oh, please more of this. This is like the greatest stuff. And so Chris would ship me all these tapes of like of Nardwuar interviews at Much Music, and I would just kind of go into a hole and figure out how to like put them on air as much as humanly possible.
Yeah.
Then.
So this was obviously before Much got acquired. The big chum.
Yeah, this would have been
purchase.
like 99 to 2001 or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. So some of the names you mentioned, Strombo. So this is, I'm trying to think, was Jen Hallett there yet, or did she come later?
What about Hannah Sung? Was Hannah Sung
Jen
there?
Hallett. Yeah, I actually was part of hiring Hannah Sung, and she is still a good friend. She is also just an unbelievably smart, wonderful, talented person. I love her.
Yeah.
What about Ed the Sock?
Yep. Yeah, I know Steve from that time. It's funny that we had this ridiculous thing where Much Music used to do these like spring break event things, and there's one called Snow Job.
Of course.
Yeah.
And we went out to Kamloops, and it was Chris Nelson from Much West and Ed the Sock and I don't know, like Bradford and Howe and stuff. But like I did a whole bunch of shoots with Ed the Sock and Chris Nelson at Snow Job, and it was bananas. Like it was it was a lot of weird stories.
Would you have like great bands like Gob playing there?
Yeah, well, I remember at Snow Job, the one that I remember the most was Len. Len had like a ski chalet up there and was hosting parties, and we would go and get invited to their chalet and get demos of new tunes they were working on. I think he was working on like some disco themed stuff, and I just remember like, oh, this is pretty neat.
That makes sense, right? Because the loop that Brendan Canning brought to Len was more. How do you like me? How do you like me? Like very disco. That's what Steal My Sunshine is built on.
I feel like Rusty played a Snow Job as well. I feel like I've seen a Rusty out on the bottom of the slopes. I always remember those that nobody would be wearing jackets up on stage. I'm like, oh my God, it looks so cold up there. But I guess when you're like rocking out that hard. So what on the Much side? So were you doing any? Because again, you became like super internet guy eventually. Were you doing anything on the website? It sounds like you were doing mainly sort of news production, sort of more like traditional media stuff at that point.
Yeah, it was mostly doing the news. So it was originally called Rapid Facts and Facts on the weekends, when it was Much News and Much News Weekly.
Sure.
And I ended up producing a lot of specials and kind of live stuff in the studio. And I think we kind of like, there was a really progressive early web team at Much back then where we put up the news, like we put up all the news updates and tried to get stuff up, but it was my primary focus was not the web at that point. It was kind of still the glory days of live television. Like it was really a fun time.
Yeah. I remember there was somebody, when I started working at Twitter, there was someone who worked for the CFL. She was like head of digital, but she worked at Much for like a long time during this era you're talking. I'm trying to remember Kelly Schuldeis, was she?
Oh yeah, she's amazing. Yeah, we worked together. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
we worked together at Rapid Facts and Much News. Totally.
Yeah, because like one day she came into like the Twitter office, and like her and Jen Hallett knew each other really well. And like Jen, respectfully, is not a big sports person. I'm like, how do you guys know each other? She's like, oh my God, Kelly and I worked at Much. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's
I think she's in Winnipeg degree now, isn't she?
Yeah, that sounds right. So
yeah,
crazy. So okay, so that's Much Music.
But for a minute, these Snow Jobs, I remember them very well. But they're all like, this is like the brainchild of David Kynes, or is he just simply at the helm when these things take off?
I think they predated me when I arrived, so I was just they were just part of the culture back then. But yeah, David.
Well, I think he's taking credit for them anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he's such a great guy. He's so funny too. Like I would not be surprised if he was the one who came up with it. It was great. They were very good. Like they had, honestly, I think one of the best teams of live event production for TV on the planet at that point. Like they could just run and gun and do stuff on the fly. And, David was kind of running all that with a guy named Neil State. They're just like the masterminds of big live TV stuff.
I feel like they were also very good at just getting stuff that was like set your watch in the calendar type stuff. So you'd have Snow Job in the winter, and then you have the MMVAs that I feel like was always like back to school, but then shifted to like more summer, because I feel like so they could do it all outside, and like just total like myth making for such a long time. Even when I feel like even by the time Moses had started to step back a bit. It's so interesting. All the people I know who worked there back in the day, because a lot end up in PR and other places, and smash cut to like 20 years. I'm like calling you like out of the blue, just like, hey, I'm gonna add you on LinkedIn and I'm gonna ask you a random question. Do you want to talk about CBC Radio? But just like the talent pool that worked there was just like incredible.
It was a very surreal place because like, I know there's a part of the whole point of it, but like just that your office is a live TV studio.
Yeah.
And that there would just be bands playing like 10 feet from your desk while you're trying to do work and stuff like that. I like in my first week of work, I think I had Britney Spears and Kid Rock and the Tragically Hip.
Right.
And two of them were, I think Kid Rock and the Hip were playing with a garage doors open and crowds all over the street. And the other one was just Britney coming in for an interview. And I just kind of passed Britney Spears in the hallway. I'm like, this is a really weird, awesome job that I've got right now. It was pretty surreal.
Well, it's also, you made the point of, Vancouver, the station you worked at, and I think of like Toronto One, and a lot of people tried this sort of thing before, and it's really, really hard to pull off properly because it just gets like super cringe really quickly if you don't sort of nail it. But like I don't know what it was. They knew the formula.
It's Moses.
Yeah. I think
Moses, warts, like for all his faults, Moses was a visionary when it came to this, what you're describing. The city is your newsroom and the environment is always in kinetic motion. And that's why we watched City Pulse.
Yeah. Well, the fact
that else too, I think they did a really good job hiring people who loved music and that were comfortable just being themselves on air and not trying to put on like a personality of like, this is what an on-air host looks like.
Well, enough about Kim Clark Champness.
Nice. Steve, I feel like we could just talk about Much Music for the next 2 hours. But before we get to CBC, I believe you worked at AOL for a time as well.
I did. I worked at AOL for like a year, and that was my last straw in Toronto where I'm like, I knew quickly that as soon as I got back to Toronto, I was like, oh, I think I need to go back to Vancouver. And that was where I talked to, at that period was when I talked to Suk Yin. But I was actually doing like, there's like a content team at AOL.
Yeah.
And so I was in charge of a bunch of channels of content at AOL that included music and entertainment and things like that. And it was, again, like a very progressive, like way ahead of its time for just things that they could track and how they thought about programming things and monitoring click-through rates. And it was almost like this, you're going to laugh, but it was almost like a pre-BuzzFeed in the way that the editorial team worked around thinking about like making listicles and photo galleries and things like that. And you're like, it was a really like, from going from all traditional media to a place that was just pure digital, it was like drinking from a fire hose of just learning so much about digital audiences and metrics and what worked and formats and things. It was pretty cool.
Honestly, like the people I talked to who worked at AOL or Yahoo in the early 2000s, it's so similar to the salespeople we had at Twitter in 2015 through like the 2020s. Like it's all just like content plays. There was actually like a number of people who worked at AOL who ended up on the Twitter sales team. Massive Toronto Mike fan Ivan Pehar, amongst other names, who did some time at AOL. So like it was a big deal. And I mean, Yahoo's an interesting one. Like I don't know if we'll get to it in the scope of this chat, but they're still sneaky relevant too. I feel like they're almost under-remembered in just their influence on the internet as we know it, because they still have their lanes. But I feel like a lot of the stuff Yahoo was doing really predicted, Facebook and social media with like groups and real-time information and integration of news. And they totally botched it in some ways, but they had the same thing. They would bring in like Hollywood people. They brought in Mercer Meyer and that didn't really work out. But again, it's a big, Steve, I was saying to Mike, like a lot of these things is just like a lot of this, even though like the technologies go away, there's so much history repeating in technology. Like everything's just a version of a
AOL
version
Messenger.
of a version. Yeah.
Look at all the, look at like Facebook Messenger and all the messaging stuff that's going on right now. Like AOL Messenger was like it was hardcore back then. It was insane. Running Man. Yeah.
And is it really that different than, WhatsApp chat or, Snapchat? Like there's tentacles of like what was in all these platforms. So I feel like we'll do like a Elaine Benez yada 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 sort of maybe AOL in the interest of time.
Yada 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 CBC. Okay, all right.
Yeah, well, maybe before we get back into CBC, just for the listeners, maybe just you sort of alluded to it, but how would you define CBC Radio 3 when you joined? Because again, it really was this aggregate of 3 websites, and then also this is right at the time. It sounds like when satellite radio was coming in. So we got Sirius, we got XM, we got these other totally different technologies. So what was CBC Radio 3 when you jumped in?
It was honestly it was this really progressive media lab, and it was a collection of different sites. I'm probably going to butcher this, so like I will do my best. But they did this really brilliant award-winning Flash magazine that was this just digital storytelling, kind of at the edges of innovation. Just celebrating a lot of different types of Canadian art, whether it was photography, or, they feature visual artists, musicians, writers, all of it. And it was.
Can I just interject for a second, just related to that? Did you and Locke Dow overlap at all?
Yep.
Yeah.
Locke and Rob McLaughlin and some of the other people that you mentioned in the book we all overlapped for a period of time.
Because Locke actually, he sent me some of the flip book, for lack of a better term, where I actually put some on my Instagram account, and then Locke actually put some of it on YouTube, and it's incredible to look back, especially thinking like, oh my god, like this was on the internet in 2002, like really ahead of its time. And the aesthetic of it was like incredible.
It was a really fascinating blend of like aesthetics and taste and curation, but also technology. That had all these brilliant developers programming stuff in Flash and making it, they actually had this was before my time, but there's a thing called home delivery that they did. That was kind of an early big media dump where you could kind of subscribe and it would just download stuff to your computer, like a whole episode or a package of rich media that I think was kind of in some ways like almost like a predated podcast of some sort.
Okay. Yeah.
They also had a late night show once a week on Saturday night on CBC Radio 2, which was back then a classical music station. And then it would just be interrupted every Saturday night. And Grant Lawrence and I think Alexis Mazurn and other people would take over and do several hours of kind of indie music programming there.
Yeah.
And then there's some of the other music related websites, like recording original sessions and concerts.
I think justconcerts.com was that?
Yeah, justconcerts.com. I'm trying to remember where the sessions were held. Yeah, there's a Roots Music Canada. The New Music Canada was the big one. The magazine, all of it. So it was quite a collection of properties. And the thing I was hired to do was to kind of make it a cohesive music service, which, in full honesty, it was a very hard transition because the magazine could not, like with the resource, there were not enough resources to do the magazine and a music service and all these other things. And it was a very painful thing to actually have to go through and stop the magazine.
Yeah. And did you find, because Rob and Locke, I think both mentioned this, and maybe you did too when we chatted, but the fact that you guys were all based in Vancouver gave you a bit of breathing room from the mothership where, you still, even by the time you joined, you had some time to experiment. And then, you obviously, when you joined, the podcast era started shortly thereafter. I'm curious how much, like, back for the folks in Toronto, like how much oversight, or was this still a bit of a sandbox when you were able to jump in?
It's funny, like I have to give the Toronto CBC management team like huge props because they really did trust us to go do our own stuff and it's this giant concrete building in Vancouver, and we were in the basement, and it felt like a skunkworks operation, and everyone there was young and cool and hipsters and web programmers and music programmers, and half of them were all musicians themselves. And it was just like, oh, this does not look or sound like CBC so much. But it was interesting, like, because at the same time, there was a similar group of people on the TV side doing a show called Zed out of Toronto, and so out of Vancouver.
Yeah. Right.
And it was very much like the TV and radio versions of kind of innovation labs there that both flourished in Vancouver. It was neat.
And they put out the Zed Sessions. I remember there were some CDs that I reviewed for Chart Magazine where like they'd have the Weaker Thans in and all the great Canadian acts of the era. It's a great time. Like it was a great time in Canadian music. Wolf Parade, I'm sure, came in and New Pornog. Like just, it also like coincides, with just like an incredible time in Canadian music with just all these like amazing bands that I think have all really stood the test of time.
Do you want to know one of the crazier things about Zed too? And this is again like ahead of its time. A bunch of these things at CBC were ahead of their time. Zed had a website where you could upload videos before YouTube. Any public person could upload videos, and they started getting hammered by people in other countries, like uploading soccer highlights and things like that, and had to kind of reel it in and shut it down because it was designed for uploading Canadian like films and video and stuff. And people were starting to, abuse the fact that there was a site to upload free video. And it was like, oh, and then YouTube came out after that. It was pretty amazing.
I was gonna say they could have sold that to Google for like $1 billion less $1 and beat the YouTube guys.
Yeah, I know. Like it really, like they built it. It was
yeah. Well, that also you mentioned New Music Canada. That website was such an incredible resource at a time again when there wasn't that many websites, and I forgot again, was it Locke or Dow that or Locke or Rob that I said this to? For the longest time, I never knew that was a CBC website. Because the CBC branding was very subtle, and one of those guys said that was actually by design because they wanted to give it a better breathing room.
It was funny that when I got there, that was fascinating too, because they're like, there's no marker on here. This is CBC. Like, oh yeah, it's on purpose because we want to make sure that people think it's a really cool thing, and then they'll find out it's CBC rather than have it as something.
That's the iWeekly move. Where let's hope people don't think we're affiliated with Torstar.
The Toronto Star. Exactly. So Steve, I know you mentioned Grant Lawrence and some other names. When do podcasts start coming in? Like, I know Grant has some of these stories about those early like viral podcasts that CBC was doing again at a time when only Ricky Gervais and maybe a couple other people. Not even Toronto Mike had a podcast back then. When did podcasts start to become more of a focus during your tenure?
Well, so I started in 2004, and then we started having to start making a lot of these changes and trying to figure out what it was, and started building a website to put all of it together as a music service. And we had about a year to wait until satellite radio was actually launched, like to go through the whole CRTC and actually launch and do it. So we were targeting kind of, I don't know, end of 2005, I think, for launching satellite radio was what we started as a target date. And as we started looking at New Music Canada, there were, like in the same timeline, there's this guy named Adam Curry who used to be MTV VJ, who, with this guy named Dave Weiner, started putting out a show called The Daily Source Code. And it was about podcasting. Right. And it was all this stuff around the future of audio and how you could make your own shows. And it was democratized, and, the democratization of production and distribution, that anybody could make it for free. And you just kind of, it was much more complicated back then of like how you actually had to do it and plug in an iPod and download it and like side load it into your iPod and stuff. But I started following it pretty closely because it felt like what a digital innovation lab in audio should be doing. And they had all these things talking about, oh, we need pod safe music. And it was like Creative Commons and things like that for licensing music. But they talked a lot about how hard it was to get music in podcasting. And I was kind of like, oh, well, we have all these artists that own their own rights, and they've signed a waiver saying that they own all their own rights. I wonder if we should try piloting a podcast for music. If we don't commercialize it, and it's really for the benefit of promoting the artists, this would be a really interesting thing to try. And so I went to there's a music rights person in Vancouver named Bridget Lumhole Smith, and I went to her with the stuff because she'd helped build the waiver for New Music Canada, and we spent a whole bunch of time doing this thing around trying to make a waiver that would be, in favor, like give the artists full permission to say yes or no. You don't have to do any of this stuff, but if you want to be considered for podcast. Here's what it is, and we're not going to commercialize it and blah, blah, blah. And we put it up on the website and got the music director at the time, James Booth, who's still there, like just another ex Much Music guy with like fabulous music taste to this day, to kind of reach out and start talking to some indie labels and artists about doing this thing. And we piloted a show and put out this thing with Grant on it. And it was like, oh, this is really cool that we've got this thing called a podcast. And it was before Apple had even put podcasting in iTunes. And I think it was maybe like 3 or 4 months later that they put it in there. And they featured CBC Radio 3 very prominently on their launch because it was one of the only music podcasts out there, like maybe the only legal music podcast out there. And it just went bonkers. And, part of it was rare and new, but a huge part of it, obviously, there's such good music at that time. And a whole bunch of artists said yes very early on. Yeah. And so we found, after that iTunes exposure, it just spread and spread and spread. And there were people listening all over the world. And, Grant had a map of the world in the office, and he would every week that an episode came out, somewhere new came in, he'd put like a little push pin in the map of like all the people listening. And oddly, like a bunch of them were A&R reps in different countries who were thinking like what's going on in Canada and hearing all this music that they wouldn't have heard in other places. I don't know. It was amazing. Like I'm trying to remember what the number was, but at its peak, it was getting, something over 100,000, 150,000 downloads a week, which today would be a huge number for a podcast. But this is, back in 2005. So, like it really took off, and it kind of led to this piece of like, almost like a Radio 3 really becoming the headquarters of like podcasting at CBC, of trying out a bunch of this stuff. And we had an early podcast network where we had a session show, we had a interview show, we had a track of the day podcast. There was a heavy metal podcast called Full Metal Podcast or something like that. We had a chart show that became a podcast. We ended up having a fake radio host named Sunshine Dick Johnson, who had a show on the radio called The Sunshine Show, and he had a podcast. And then we actually, this thing that's been happening in the last little while, the idea of like kind of an aggregated feed for a network where people will have a big feed right now, and then they'll just start putting other shows in it. So you kind of subscribe to the feed.
Right.
We had a CBC Radio 3 super feed where you could just subscribe and just get all music and all this stuff for a long time. And also weirdly, we had one of the very first music video podcasts, a thing called R3 TV that this just amazing director and comedian named and storyteller Jordan Kochuk made. And I was so proud of that also. Like it was almost like a little sitcom around the Radio 3 office and a bunch of musicians that all went out. It was like that really crazy time where it was just, it was almost like satellite radio took a little bit of a backseat because the podcasting thing exploded so much. Yeah.
I mean, satellite radio, it's interesting this happening at the exact same time that, satellite radio was going to take over, and CBC, that they had the stuff with Galaxy and whatnot. But like satellite radio, I feel like as they envision it, never really happened. And now it's primarily something I think people listen to in their cars primarily. But it's interesting you give that example, and I feel like that is in the book about the podcast ending up, when they did add it to iTunes, they had like a real prime real estate. It reminds me of, you can't really undersell surfaceability and just let's just call it like product placement, whether it's intentional or otherwise. I remember when I started Twitter, like we would do these lists of Mike, I'm sure I pitched you on some of these, like back in the day, like most followed athletes, most followed teams, most followed politicians. Right. And I remember one of the most followed athletes was always Nick Swisher. you remember Nick Swisher?
I don't know who that is.
He was like a guy who's sort of a serviceable player. He was on the A's and then he was on the Yankees for a bit, but like not an all-star, just sort of a guy. And like I'm a big sports guy, so I'm like, this doesn't make sense. It would be like Mike Trout, Yu Darvish, like all the Japanese players were really popular, and then maybe like Bryce Harper, and then it would be like Nick Swisher. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. So I asked like the sports lead, he's like, oh, it just because for the first 3 years of Twitter, like Nick Swisher was just one of the recommended accounts with like Obama and like New York Times and like Messi and whatever. And like I think Nick Swisher's actually done like interviews about this too. So sometimes it is just like happenstance, especially at that time, and like there's no reason. It just kind of happens, and then off you go. Like stuff goes viral like very, very quickly. So with what was sort of the evolution and maybe your outro point for CBC? Because again, you were there 10 different years. Like your role more on the website, like how did that evolve as you went on?
Well, it's funny. The one thing I have to say that is, with the podcasts were a big deal. The thing that evolved, because the podcast kind of dipped for a while before they got hot again when like YouTube and Facebook picked up. And there was a really magical period with satellite radio and the website of Radio 3. And the web team, I got to say, I give them just like massive props. Like it was a really weird thing to have like a full development team at your disposal to build a music service for a radio station. And we had this choice with satellite radio where it had a lot of like very high CanCon requirement levels and things around like, how new artists could be and how new the songs and albums could be and all that sort of stuff. So it was still very, primed for new music and new artists in Canada. And when we launched, we were still playing a decent amount of international music. Like when we didn't have to play Canadian music, we would be playing sub pop artists and things like that, right? And we hit this point where we're like, you know what? We have all this music that has been uploaded to the website from only Canadian musicians, and we have these podcasts that are only Canadian that are doing well. What if we made the satellite radio station only Canadian, and all the music played on satellite radio was also the music that had been uploaded to the website, so that if we had a stream of the Radio 3 thing on the website, you could click on every song that was playing and add it to an on-demand playlist, or share a song that's playing live on the radio as an on-demand track with other people. And you could have like a community conversation on a blog on a live radio show while people are doing that sort of stuff. And they built it. Like they built a thing that would like just things talking to each other. Like we're like having to get like a music scheduling software to talk to a website, to talk to the display stuff that would go out on your Sirius Canada, display on your screen, to connect all these different pieces together, and built a thing where you could add on-demand tracks and make playlists and save playlists. Like there was a period where there were a ton of people who had really big on-demand playlists on the CBC website, and that got a ton of traffic. And people would show up from satellite radio who were listening in the States and would come in and participate on the website. Like they found it on satellite radio and heard all these conversations happening about Canadian music and went in, and it just became this like really unbelievable online community. Like it wasn't like the music was amazing, but then there's this amazing fan base and community that came around it. And I think that, part of it was the podcast, but there's a gathering place with the website and the radio shows. And the stuff that happened from that, like, man, like people would go to shows together. They'd like travel across the country and put each other up. A couple got married. There are people who have like Radio 3 tattoos and license plates and things. Like it was a really unbelievable community. And there's still a Facebook community where they still get together and chat and go to shows and things. It was a really special time.
I was going to say, I mean, this just sounds like social media, whether it's like a message board in the 90s or a Yahoo group in the early 2000s, or, the Radio 3 community, or like a Slack channel or a Discord channel in Reddit, the present day. Yeah, Reddit. Like it's all versions of the same thing. And for you, I mean, you really built, like you built a career off like podcasting now. Like why don't you tell us a bit what you're doing now? Because I know you're like all in on podcasts and have been even for a long time post CBC even.
So Radio 3 kind of evolved into this bigger thing of trying to say, like, how can we apply the Radio 3 stuff to other genres of music, which became a thing called CBC Music. So I did that for a few years, and then I basically got told at the time, like, your career is going nowhere unless you move back to Toronto.
Yeah.
And so I started plotting my exit so I could stay in Vancouver, and we'd been doing some stuff at Radio, or I guess at CBC Music, with sponsors. Like with Grant, we did a Volkswagen Beetle Fender edition road trip where he like drove across the country with his producer Chris Kelly, and they documented it all and did podcasts and recorded bands and things like that. And there's one with Via Rail, and anyways, it was interesting being like, oh, this is interesting that brands are sponsoring and bringing to life really good content. And then I saw Red Bull starting to do a lot of stuff where they were just bypassing media altogether.
Yeah.
And building up their own audience and making stuff that was better than what Sportsnet and TSN were putting on for, snowboarding and things like that.
Right.
And so I was kind of like, oh, maybe we'll go out and start a company to help brands think and act more like media companies and start making things that people actually like and want to spend time with, and let them build their own audiences and just bypass the media companies. And very soon after starting it, Serial came out, and it was like the second wave of podcasting just exploded.
Right.
And so I had coffee with a woman named Jenny Iwano, who was running stuff at Zed at CBC, and we were both talking about podcasting, and kind of brought her into this company because we wanted to be like, let's just be the only company in the world that does podcasts with brands, but we don't make infomercials. We actually help them become media companies.
Yeah.
And so, I did that for about 8 or 9 years, and became an even deeper podcast nerd.
Yeah. Well, again, I feel like that at that point too, everyone had a smartphone. It was kind of the end of the iPod era too. All these, the surfaceability of just having, that podcast in your pocket was, everyone had it, the BlackBerry was done, the iPod was done. We were in a totally different phase. And Mike, I feel like, again, that's when did I'm trying to remember what year your podcast started.
2012.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, right in sort of that ballpark too. Is just, yeah. And now here we are, and they continue to just accelerate. It's just like wild times again. I feel like a big theme in the book is, how fleeting a lot of this stuff is, but everything you described, at least during your CBC journey that you were in, it all kind of made sense. It all laddered and sort of built on each other. And for you guys, like everyone else, you're just trying to keep up with people they might not have a laptop, and they might have this BlackBerry, and they have this iPod. So it's like, okay, what do we do with this? And this isn't going to be here forever. So you have to be constantly changing, as Steve.
I think there's also a piece around curiosity, right? Is if you're into this stuff, it's like a whole blank canvas to be like, no one's figured this out yet, right? At some point with TV and radio, it becomes very formatted, and it's like paint inside the lines. This is what works.
Yeah.
And you get less room to play around. And I think I was very lucky to kind of be at some of the places like Much Music, when there was still a lot of freedom to be really creative and try stuff.
Yeah.
But for me, every one of these new opportunities in the digital space was like, we get to go figure it out. We made it this is so much fun to go in and play in this and try stuff and see what works. And I think, even today, I don't know, I feel like there's still a lot of people taking the same mentality with and whether it's AI or whatever it is, but it's, some people are going to use it to, optimize it and make everything really efficient. And I think other people are going to be like, what's all the weird stuff we can do with this that was not possible before, that would be lots and lots of fun for people.
Yeah. I mean, it's, if nothing else, it's another platform for creativity. And maybe a final question. I might throw this out to both you guys. At what point do you think we stop calling podcasts? And a footnote to that point, I think this is on a recent Bill Simmons podcast where someone just asked him, again, one of the originators of, sort of these massively popular, okay, so there's Bill Simmons podcast now available on Netflix. You can see them. Isn't this just a show at some point? Like,
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, like
but
when
it is
does the
such
term,
a contentious thing.
Yeah.
It's so contentious.
Yeah. What do you think, Toronto Mike? When does the name podcast go away, or does it?
I think it has everything to do with the XML feed. Like, so long as it's an open schema, an XML file that's driving the syndication of this audio content, it is a podcast. Okay. And once the XML is removed, like if it's just on, for example, if it's just on a YouTube video show or on Netflix or whatnot, now you're just at a show.
Yeah.
But no one owns XML. Like, it's an open source. No one owns it. So I can go with Steve and build a podcast app that can parse XML and serve up episodes of any podcast that exists with an XML feed. To me, that's one of my biggest fear. You talked earlier about we talked about the web disappearing.
Yeah,
and you're documenting it in this fine book, Track Changes,
available now through major booksellers.
Buy Track Changes and buy tickets to see me at the Elmo on May 21. Those are the two takeaway
we'll give you a
action items.
Package deal.
But I literally, Steve, you might say, Mike, you're an idiot, but I still manually maintain an XML file for Toronto Mike. So
I love it. Yeah.
I hand code the new item block for this episode in my XML, and I upload it to my web server. That XML is what makes it a podcast.
But when did
you're old school?
Yeah, but when did you start recording them and streaming them on YouTube? Because I feel like that's a fairly.
But that's
Is that a podcast?
That content is the same, but that's not the podcast. Like,
why do you do that?
It just,
what is the purpose?
The purpose is I'm recording anyway, and these cameras sit here, and I just press a button in OBS and I record. So I am recording.
Yeah, and some people listen through.
It's interesting because this is where it gets weird. Google Podcasts disappeared because Google likes to fuck with us, and then they said, okay, YouTube is now the podcast app from Google. Okay, so my XML file is indexed by YouTube.
Yeah, and
every episode, YouTube will create a show based on my XML file. So that is the podcast, but exclusive. So not related to that. I also will record video, which I'm doing with us today.
Sure,
and I will upload that to my YouTube channel. So you will have two instances of Toronto Mike on my YouTube. One is actually the podcast.
Right.
The other is just the same content, and it'll sound the same, but it is not the podcast. It is a non-XML
I just think it's notable that, podcasts, big and small, have, in the last 5 years all gone almost, they all look almost like a Tom Snyder show where you have that sort of like closed.
But you didn't get your hair done or makeup done. Like literally, this is exactly how we did it. When did I start? 2012. So 14 years ago, it was the same place, same everything, different board. But we recorded the same way. The only difference is I literally press a button, record button in OBS, and I also live stream it through the same software, OBS.
Yeah, and again, this gets back to whether it's people talk like responding to like other bits of text on the internet or on cell phones or whatever, or watching like video, listening to audio. The platform's changed, the technology's changed, but the actual like act is not really that different from like even AOL.
Well, it's so crazy because so I agree with you, Mike, like that for me as like somebody who's been doing it for a long time, like the feed is the thing that, like, if you really would want to technically define podcast.
Yeah.
But pop culture has changed to this thing where it's just a chat show on YouTube that doesn't even have audio sometimes is a podcast. Or like, I'm kind of like, how is Kill Tony a podcast? It's a live streamed video show from a comedy club in Texas that is primarily on like a YouTube stream, but it's called a podcast.
Well, can you subscribe to this Kill Tony program, which I have not seen, but I've heard of? Can you subscribe to it in an app like Podcast Addict, for example?
I don't even know. My hunch is
there a feed?
Potentially not.
Right. Well, that's not a
primary
podcast.
place. It's like it's designed as a video show. Like it's
sure.
Multi-camera editing. Yeah.
And one of the big mind fucks is like, ultimately, it doesn't really matter. It's all content, I always think in terms of like PR or like my speak at events and stuff where it's like media relations. Cause like I've worked in communications for a long time and I speak to a lot of journalists, but I'm like, it doesn't matter if it's something on your app or it's something on the Globe and Mail website. If you got one screen, What are you looking at the screen? Is it an app? Is it like on a browser?
So it does matter, right? Like,
I mean, it does.
Like when somebody says, "Oh, if Spotify gives a bunch of money to some podcaster and we have exclusivity, and you have to go to Spotify to hear this content or whatever," like that's nice for them and nice for Spotify, but that's not a podcast anymore.
When it ends up on
like if it's
Spotify,
exclusive to one platform, like one tech giant has exclusivity, like if I can't subscribe to it with any half decent podcast aggregator.
Yeah, but isn't this the same as if you want to watch Different Strokes, you got to be on NBC? Like, is that in terms of perfect analogy?
Love that fucking show too.
Yeah, or like sports,
shows.
right? Like take your pick. I mean, this is how like media works. So I don't know. I mean, we're not going to figure this out, but I feel like this could go into all different.
Well, I want to let Steve know a fun fact before we say goodbye. First of all, Steve, you were amazing.
Thank you. This has been a treat. And I should say, congrats on the book, Cam. Like, I'm so excited this is out.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Nice work.
Of course. Thank you so much for making time. And it took a while, but we got there. And it's great to have you part of it. I mean, it's a big part of that CBC chapter.
Well, I want to say that's what I'm talking about. Steve Pratt is a big part of chapter 10. Okay?
There you go.
In fact, chapter 10 closes with a quote from Steve Pratt. Okay.
What? Okay.
Yep. I don't know. Have you got a copy of this yet?
I have a PDF version. Okay. My other one is being shipped in like a week.
Okay. I just got mine like a couple hours ago. But the bottom of the end of chapter 10 is Steve Pratt, and then the beginning of chapter 11 is Toronto Mike.
There you go.
Oh, look at this.
Like
look at
bookends.
this.
So
I love it.
Yeah, you lead into me, and that is the great book Track Changes. And thank you, Steve Pratt.
Yeah, one door closes, another one opens. So.
But it's hell in the hallways or something like that.
Awesome.
Okay. Steve, thanks for doing this, buddy.
Hey, a treat to finally meet you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Steve. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, take care, guys.
Bye. Steve Pratt is now an FOTM.
There
Cam, you made that happen.
Coast.
And yeah, I mean, that's a full episode he got. He got like 55 minutes.
Yeah. Just before we go, Mike.
Yeah, I can say, this is where, because I'm going to fall asleep soon. So
I was going to say, why don't you promised me we're going to play a bit of word association, right?
Okay, here's a trade. I'll play your word association if you allow me to play 29 seconds from not the most recent episode, because that's Stu Stone, the episode before that with a country singer from Bowmanville who now lives in Nashville. So if I can play 30 seconds of that.
That's a deal. It's your show.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Who's going first? Am I going first?
Yeah, you go, because mine's a 30-second clip I'm going to press play on.
I originally, this game of word association had 8 items. I'm going to pare this back to 3.
Okay.
You just tell me your relationship. Did you use these things? What's the first thing that comes to mind? Okay.
Okay, prepare to be disappointed. Go ahead.
Okay. The iPod.
I had a few iPods. Yes, I had iPods.
Okay. Well, did you get one like right away? Were you like right in there? You don't
not right away. No, I'm not a bleeding edge guy. Like I didn't do it right away.
You're not lining up on the street.
I had at the time particularly, I had I would just taste for like the proprietary nature of a Apple product. Okay. And I was rocking an iRiver.
An iRiver.
So sure. iRiver.
Yeah.
Which what I liked about the iRiver was, I could give it my 1,000 songs would be loaded up and I could hear them, but also I could tune in FM radio.
Okay, yeah.
And at this time, an iPod did not have FM radio.
Yeah.
And I quite liked that. So I rocked an iRiver for a long time before I eventually got I think my first iPod was a Touch.
Okay.
But I was running in 2008. I was doing a lot of running because I wanted to run a marathon.
Sure.
And I had what's called a shuffle.
Okay.
That I would wear on my arm.
And is this a company, iRiver? Like is
iRiver was like I believe it was maybe Rio was the company. I can't remember now, but iRiver was was not Apple, so it was an iPod competitor.
Okay, interesting. Well, around the same time I was emailing you about those LG cell phones, and you were ignoring another big client of High Road was Microsoft, and that was the era of the Zune, which had an FM receiver in it, I believe, which is a big differentiator. And obviously,
I didn't touch the Zune.
Did not work.
It didn't smell good from the get-go. Like this was like sometimes I feel like something is a dog with fleas, and I just completely ignore it.
Yeah. I feel like people could see that one coming from a million miles away, but they gave it a shot.
I like this game. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. Okay, 2 more here for you. Okay, this is very specific. This is going to be a 2-parter. HMV at 333 Yonge Street, and specifically the listening bar upstairs or the listening stations. Did you hang out at these places?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was a regular visitor to 333 Yonge Street to go to HMV and the various floors. I spent a lot of time in the basement.
Okay, which is where the hip hop was, and
at this time, a lot of time down there. That's where I famously ran into Kish.
Of course. Where else?
And working at the in the basement at HMV was the woman who played Kathleen on Degrassi.
Okay,
and to me, that was a huge deal that I could be listening to CDs and checking things out in the basement, checking out the BPM charts and all these different things. And there would be Kathleen working at the register. That was exciting.
Did you ever go to in-stores at that store?
I don't even know exactly what that sentence means.
Like an in-store performance. They would have artists in to play a few tunes at the back of the store.
No, I don't know why I didn't. Like, the closest I would get to that would be like I'd be made aware that outside CF&Y at Shooter and Young, Sloan would be performing, and I would bike over.
Do 3 songs.
I was living at, and I would bike over for that. Yeah. And I did a couple of those, but I don't remember going to any in-store performances at HMV, believe it or not.
Gotcha. I think the only in-store I saw there was actually the late, great Joe Strummer. And
wow.
I do have a photo of me and Joe Strummer, and I don't think I knew he was quite a diminutive man. So as you can imagine, I had about a foot on him.
Wow.
I don't know where that photo
Former
is.
member of the Pogues, as I recall.
That's right. Most notably,
the only band that mattered, the Pogues.
For 6
Good
months.
Irish band.
Yeah. So R.E.P. Joe Strummer. And last but not least, and I actually have another prop that goes with this one. MySpace. Were you on MySpace?
I was never on MySpace as Toronto Mike or myself, Mike. I was on MySpace because I ran the custom MySpace page. So at this point,
of course you did. Of course,
I was the webmaster for custom.
Okay.
In managing his email list.
Sure.
And managing his MySpace account.
Okay, so were people like DMing him?
So I was, because I had the blog since 2002 and the TorontoMike.com since 1999, and it was an exciting extension that in early 2000s, I want to say 2003 or 4, when I befriended Custom, whose real name was Dwayne Levold. Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home, gone too soon, but. Not only would he send me a wealth of new material, but he basically explained that the company he had signed with, which I think was called Artist Direct or something like that, had gone belly up, and he was sort of a man without a country, and he needed somebody who spoke the language of the digital marketing world to help him with things like his website and taking it over from Artist Direct and, again, MySpace and et cetera, et cetera. And I was excited to do that.
Excellent. Well, there's a bit about MySpace.
There should be a chapter in your book about the custom stuff.
There is. If you come to the launch event, I believe we're going to have a former MySpace Canada employee there.
That's huge.
I won't sign her up.
Why are you burying the lead?
Going to be there. And can I show you one more thing? Do you know what this is?
Let me.
Don't read the words on it.
I do know who that is because there's an infamous photo where he's like wearing a white T-shirt and. He's looking over his shoulder or whatnot. I know who that is.
Yeah, so this is Tom, the famous founder of MySpace, where he's everyone's first friend. This is from a magazine I used to read. Have you ever seen this magazine, Peace Magazine?
No, I don't recognize that.
So this is a magazine you could pick up at. They would sometimes have it at Future Shop or HMV sometimes. It's a pretty quality
nice
magazine.
Beastie Boys ad in the back.
Actually, I actually wrote this article
okay,
here.
Look at you.
Look at this. We're talking about remembering some guys.
Yeah. Okay, Alex Rios. Yeah.
Remember when he left Toronto? He told some people to fuck off
outside the ROM. Outside the ROM. Listen? That's almost as bad as asking me if I remember the Michael Johnson Donovan Bailey 100-meter race.
But I remember when the Jays played the Royals and he was on the team batting ninth and he got some hits against the Jays. That was very painful. Anyway, Tom came to Toronto, did a junket. That there was like a 2-page spread in here.
See, I like that guy. He cashed out, and he didn't become some evil presence in the world. He's probably traveling the world, photographing things, and just being a good dude.
Yeah, like every once in a while, it surfaces like whatever happened to Tom, and but he's also like not trying to be all high and mighty and like give his wisdom. He's just like right place, right time. Probably worked hard. But this feature, it's a 2-page feature, says absolutely nothing. It's unbelievable. But again, it was a different time. Like these weren't companies. Like he just, Rupert Murdoch came. He's like, hey, can I buy this? I'll give you a few $1 billion. He's like, sure.
That's wild. So. All right. So you ready for the 30 seconds that conclude this country music rising star,
so
nominated
ready.
for a Juno. 30 seconds, and then we got to go because I got to put my kids to bed. Okay, here's the 30 seconds. Just before we say goodbye, I'll just let you know there is a tremendously talented CBC reporter that I follow very closely, whose name is Megan Fitzpatrick. And I used to see your name in the wild, and I'd always have this double take, like, that can't be Megan Fitzpatrick. You're Megan Patrick. So I just want the listeners make sure they're not confused, because Megan Fitzpatrick is a known entity on Toronto Mic'd, but you are Megan Patrick.
Yeah.
So I had a Megan Patrick on, and we had a chat about this CBC reporter I follow very closely named Megan Fitzpatrick.
She does good work. Yeah.
There's no one better. I think she should be anchoring the National, as far as I'm concerned.
Maybe
Move
one of
over
these days.
Adrian Arsenault.
Absolutely.
Okay. I can't wait for your book event. Remind us when and where.
Again, it's Wednesday, March 25th. I don't think I said the time when we were talking about it before. It's at
What time
7
should I be
p.m.
there? Okay.
Yeah.
What time do I hit the stage?
You'll be on at 6:59.
Wow. So that's the time to arrive, everybody. Kensington Market. Again, congrats on writing a book, Cam Gordon.
Thank
That's
you.
amazing. Do I have an applause here?
No, thank you for being part of the book, and you're an easy addition to it. I mean, you're part of that blog chapter and really part of this digital story. We're continuing to write here in the basement.
I felt good about my role until you brought Steve Pratt on, and I realized I'm nobody.
Oh, to your point, all the pieces matter.
Okay, there's an MF on the live stream who wrote, "Aw, thanks." So watch out,
Just
Adrian Arsenault.
listening in.
You know what?
I'll be home
The
soon.
CBC has ears. That's all I'm gonna say. Be careful what you say. One on our way out, because I have 20 seconds.
Sure.
Who's the most important person you wanted to talk to for track changes, but declined the invitation to chat?
There's a few. I would say John Sakamoto would have been huge. Honestly, mainly to talk about his work at Canoe and like Sun Media. That website to this day is incredibly well archived. Just an unbelievable volume of content, and I don't know, like it a very under-remembered part. And he was very polite. He just politely declined. And then the stuff he did with the Star, with the anti-hit list, and yeah,
I'm surprised he declined. That's interesting. Anyone else?
Yeah, there was a few others. I tried to get to Terry Riley from Network Records. I just don't think he's doing media these days. In the music, like he would have been like a no-brainer. I did speak to a few other people that work for Network. Yeah, there's a few others that would have been nice to have, but those two come to mind as like big ones. But I still feel like we did them well in terms of talking about their contributions and what they meant to this story.
Well, you did this book well.
Thank you.
Track changes.
Well is what I aim for.
I don't know. What an awkward.
Sure.
I think it worked out. I don't know if I'm going to ever get an opportunity to host the National, but you did good, man.
Thank you. Enjoy.
An important book, and thank you for the nice words about me in chapter 11. And that, the Stu Stone Cam Gordon doubleheader, that's exhausting, man.
It's a big day for you. No wonder you're tired.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,864th show. Go to TorontoMike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. Get a ticket or two to see me at the Elma Combo on May 21st. Just do it. Spread your cheeks. Whip out that credit card. Just do it, okay?
Well
I don't want to be
put.
talking to an empty room. Come on. Where's my pride? Come on. Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery, Palma Pasta. You bringing home a lasagna for MF again?
Let's talk. I'll see how much I can fit in my bag.
Nick Ianni's, RecycleMyElectronics.ca, and Redley Funeral Home. Fresh episode of Life's Undertaking in the feed right now. See you all, tomorrow. Let me just see here quickly here. Oh, Jeff Vidler is coming on. Jeff Vidler, we're going to talk about radio ratings, whack of interesting things on that front. See you all then.